Welcome to each of you to today's 15th annual Fire Summit and also our 4th virtual Fire Summit. On behalf of the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, we want to welcome each of you for a day of professional development and learning that you can use immediately within your classroom, whether it's later today or even tomorrow. Today's sessions are going to span from preschool to the 12th grade. Although they'll be divided from preschool to the 5th grade and also another streaming segment on grades 6 through 12, we will have things like learning and innovation. We'll be focusing on professional action networks, modern classroom, building it forward with the tiny homes. The main thing that we really want to share, regardless what field, what profession, whether you're in private industry or you're an educator, each of us want to learn from the best. Who's the other all-stars? Who's the other high-performing colleagues that we have within our area, across the state, and what are they doing? What are they doing to improve each and every day? Well, today, the goal of our Fire Summit is to enlighten you as to what the best and the brightest, the most innovative students and educators are doing now. And this is so important. It's probably more important than any other time in history because we're coming out of a worldwide pandemic. You probably had many other things to focus on. So now today, you get to see what the best and the brightest students and educators are doing within our area to help the most important person improve, and that's you.
Welcome to the 15th Fire Summit. This is our 4th virtual one. We are so excited that you're going to be watching our Learning Innovation Grant recipients as they present what they're going to be doing to address their problem of practice. This fall, they will be addressing the problem of practice that they identified in their grant application, and they'll tell us how they're going to address that. And then in the spring, they will come back and they will tell us how it worked and was it successful or was it not, and what are they going to change to help it to be better. The session that you're about to view is of teachers that are teaching grades K through 5. Enjoy.
Hey guys, this is Kelly Ratliff from Central Elementary here in Johnson County, and I'm with.
I'm Dustin Blair, and I'm also here at Central Elementary in Johnson County.
And this is our ARI grant for Tabletop Lessons.
Our area of focus, something that we thought about, the problem of practice includes the lack of hands-on learning opportunities for special education students in the classroom. For some students, this is they have a problem with sometimes they'll get embarrassed or they don't want to, they're afraid of what their classmates might think of them if they answer something wrong, or even just the possibility of their disability coming out in class. So sometimes they don't want to speak up and answer. So we thought that these dry erase boards would give them an opportunity to help them express themselves in class.
Another thing we thought of with the hands-on tabletop lessons, where they could write on the table, they would feel more included because often they lose track when trying to type notes or write notes, and this gives them a chance to feel like they're part of the actual lesson. With that being said, our research question come from will using the hands-on opportunities that provide the retention of basic educational concepts like fostering reading skills, comprehension, math skills to those students that are in special education, will it help them function more towards their same age peers? Because we know they're below. Will this help close that gap?
So why dry erase tables? So hands-on instruction. I know Kelly and myself, we're big on engagement in our classroom. We like to make sure that students are moving around, doing as much hands-on as possible. These tables provide that for them. They're able to, move around and work on those tables, express themselves, not only with other students, but with me or Ms. Ratliff or any of their teachers. They're able to express themselves. And with that being said, like, it makes learning fun. Nobody wants a boring classroom. So if they're up and they're moving around and it's interactive and engaging, The students are going to be having fun. I've watched Miss Ratliff already has one in her classroom, and I've got to watch the kids interact, and they have fun when they do it. So, and when learning's fun, then you're going to have more desirable outcomes in your classroom.
Based it off what Dustin just said about learning being fun, that brings us to our next part, which is reinforcement. I use my table I already have as a reward for hard work and good behavior. Those that work hard and have good behavior, they get to spend more time at the dry erase tables and get to do more work on the dry erase tables. And it really encourages and reinforces that, hey, if I do this, I'm going to get to do the fun stuff. And it almost takes the learning to a different level, because they don't realize when they're having this fun and they're trying really hard that they're learning as much as what they're learning. And another way, I really, really like this last one. It's really easy for my kids, especially, to go through and lose papers. We lose papers on the daily. And this way, if I want to do a quick assessment, I just have them basically write it on the table. And I walk by, I check them really fast, and I go on. And that's how I do most of my quick assessments, and I'm able to adjust and correct their mistakes right then and there. Don't have to worry about them losing papers. Don't have to worry about me losing the papers, because it's right there. If it's something I need to keep, I just snap a quick picture of it and I send it in my Google Drive. Our action plan is we're going to look at the data that he collects from his special education classroom compared to the data I collect from mine. My students are a lot different from his. They have a lot more learning disabilities, physical disabilities, and are at a lower level, even though they're the same age as some of the peers that are in his class. So we're going to do different activities. Some will be basically the same on different levels, and we're going to compare that data, and then we're going to actually compare that data to some of the data of the regular non-disabled peers, just to see if our students did make the growth that they we want them to see and that they expect to see. These are going to be, like you said, a way for these kids to communicate. They write little notes to each other. They write little notes to me. They don't have to feel embarrassed. And that's what we want. We want our kids to feel safe and comfortable in our classrooms. And hopefully this grant provides that safe haven for these kids that we work with daily.
Good afternoon or good morning. My name is Erin Bowling, and I teach first grade at Porter Elementary. That's in Hager Hill, Kentucky. It's a part of the Johnson County School District. This is my 11th year of teaching, and I wrote an ARI grant entitled Our Virtual Game is Strong, and I'm excited to tell you about that today. So I was awarded 3 sets of the Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headsets, and I've included some pictures in here to in case you're not familiar with those. If you have young children, you probably are. So this is the newest version. This is the Quest 2. This is what it looks like on the outside. This is the headset, and these are the 2 arm controllers. And this is sort of what it looks like on the inside. So you kind of can get a picture of what it looks like on the inside. And this is a young person wearing the headset, so you can get a picture of what that might look like and how they're holding those arm controllers. So let me tell you a little bit about why I wrote the grant for the virtual reality headsets. My main goal was to kind of be outside the walls of the classroom. We're from a very rural area, and I want to give any opportunities and experiences for the students that I can. So you can see there's some very cool looking images here. You can see the first photo is a great field trip opportunity. This is Stonehenge, I believe, yes. And then we have some various National Geographic field trips. Mount Everest, things like that. Those are all in the realm of what you can do with a VR headset. You can see this young lady here is wearing the headset and all the different places that she can go. Also, you can it's more than just field trip opportunities. You can walk in the footsteps of Martin Luther King. And so those are just a very small percentage of what you can do with the virtual headsets. So I'll continue to explain. So one of the reasons I wrote this was to create excitement, engagement surrounding social studies and science. So I feel like I've starting to really be good at teaching language arts, teaching reading, teaching writing, math. Those have kind of been focus areas for me. I feel like my game is strong in those areas. Can always learn more, of course, but science and social studies is somewhere I always felt like that I could improve on. So I kind of come up with this idea. It was a very popular Christmas gift last year, very expensive Christmas gift. So I started reading more about it and realizing that it was being adapted into the classroom. And I thought, how awesome would that be to provide that experience for our students? So a few things that it does is, of course, pictures in books and videos, they're all excellent resources. We've used them for years. But what is, better is actually feeling like you've been there. Like I said, what was once thought as an exciting and expensive Christmas gift has now been adapted into educational enjoyment. So students are not limited to just word descriptions or book illustrations. They can actually learn by doing rather than just reading or hearing. So if you're doing a lesson on beehives, you can actually take a tour of the inside of a beehive using these virtual headsets. If you're teaching about the 7 wonders of the world, you can actually be immersed in that experience using these headsets. So more about what it does. It's an entire digital environment. It's a 360-degree immersive user experience that feels real, because it is a 360-degree experience. It provides students with immersive learning experiences, and it just really elevates your lesson. It brings your lesson to life. So you could look at example Machu Picchu all you want in a textbook. You could show a video, but what would bring it more to life than them actually feeling like they're there? And they can do that with these virtual reality headsets. So here are a few examples. You could, in this, like I said, just a very small snippet of what these are capable of doing. I've researched it heavily, but I don't even know what all they can do yet. So I'm super excited to get to do that. But you do tours of beehives, walk with Martin Luther King. You can identify stars and constellations, planets, even the satellites. My big thing is the geography, that the possibilities with that seem endless. The 7 wonders of the world, field trips wherever you want to go. One of our first grade science standards, variation of traits, you could go to national parks, look at the Earth's place in the universe. And those are just a few small things. I love these photos down at the bottom. You can see that this is what they're seeing inside those headsets. The up close view of the Earth, up close view of the solar system. So my whole why is a few reasons. One, the pandemic has created an environment where we're unable to, or have been unable to really experience anything. Even still, we're back in in-person school, which is wonderful, but we're still kind of on a stopping point right now with providing any kind of outside learning experiences like field trips. So I think that this is a great opportunity for that. Also, one of my big whys is it provides experiences that we may never have, myself included, not just my students from my very rural area, which I am from also, but I may never get to experience the coral reef off of Australia, or I may never get to experience the Eiffel Tower in Paris, or to look inside at your body's organs. I mean, those are awesome experiences that we all can do. Also, it meets all 7 learning styles, and I'm going to change my video here just a second. Make knowledge available to my rural areas, which I mentioned. Also, I'm hoping, and that's what I'm going to do with my evaluation of the headsets, is combat behavioral issues and those who experience difficulty concentrating and staying focused. I think this is going to be a great engagement tool. So evaluation and effectiveness. So this is how I plan on evaluating the effectiveness of the grant items that I received. So to evaluate the effectiveness of the Oculus VR headset, I plan to choose 2 units from each subject area. So 2 units from science and 2 units from social studies. I will teach those 2 units prior to the arrival of the VR sets. I will assess both units and record those assessment scores. Then I'm going to reteach the lessons and incorporate the Oculus Quest. Then I will reassess and compare the scores. As well, because I'm using it as an engagement technique and a behavioral technique, I'm going to do a pre and post survey evaluating the overall engagement, noting student behavior and student feelings towards the VR experience. So my project budget was, I ordered 3 Oculus Quest 2 all-in-one VR headsets. They were $299 per unit for a total of $897. They have come down a little bit since last Christmas. Last Christmas, they were a little bit more expensive. So I was excited that they'd come down a little bit. It gave me the opportunity to get one more set. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about receiving the Oculus Quest. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can contact me at Porter. It's 606-789-2545, or feel free to email me. Hello, my name is Erin Bowling. I teach 1st grade at Porter Elementary. This is my 11th year at Porter teaching. I have taught both 1st and 3rd, 1st for the longest. Porter is in Hager Hill, Kentucky, and it's part of the Johnson County School District. The title of my ARI mini grant is called What Happened to the Overhead Projectors? And if you all were students in the 70s or 80s or probably even early 90s, you know what I'm talking about. So my research question is, how can my students see me and my lesson? And I really, I wanted to get this item, and I'm going to show you a little bit about it in just a minute. I'm going to move my camera so you can see my pictures. So what happened to the overhead projectors we all had as children growing up in the classroom, like below? And you can see those photos, and you know what I'm talking about. We all had those in our classroom growing up. I actually wrote another mini grant that I received for the VR headsets, and that was my original idea. But a coworker come to me and said, this is a really cool item. I wish we could have that. And I thought, well, I'll write a grant on it. When I started researching this item that I'm getting ready to show you, it just reminded me of these overhead projectors that we all had growing up. So what happened to the overhead projectors that we had? Well, this is what happened to them. They got cool. So this is called the learning glass, or kind of in the tech world and with the people that created this, it's called an e-glass. And these are some photos of the e-glass. So you can see this man is actually using the e-glass. It's got some really cool things I'm going to tell you about. This is what it looks like. Here's another professor using his e-glass. Now, this is the really cool part. So my research question was, how can my students see me and my presentation, or my lesson? So you're going to stand behind this learning glass or e-glass. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So meet the e-glass, or it's called the learning glass. It's a 35-inch glass LED light board. It's a specialized piece of glass that has LED lighting that creates a transparent white board to illuminate writing with neon markers. It comes with several of these neon sort of dry erase markers. It uses AlumaClear technology, and it can be paired with a computer, a camera, iPad, iPhone. So the teacher sits behind the e-glass facing her students and writes, or he faces the students and writes normally, and the internal mirrors flip the images automatically. Also, Zoom is built in. You can insert a PowerPoint or any image that you wish to add in your presentation. So my why. Well, first of all, I teach first grade. So I always have anywhere between 20 and 25 first graders. And, you know, those little bodies, it's hard to contain them sometimes. And I just was really finding it a challenge when I was teaching using my whiteboard, especially virtually. But in person also, I always felt like, okay, that was a great lesson, but my back was to them a lot of the time. Or not only was my back to them, but half of the class could only see part of my lesson. So it's a game changer for both in-person and virtual teaching. As educators, we also know how much importance there is with eye contact, classroom management, or to enhancing learning. Like I said, I always feel like my back is to my students. Even with lessons that I've created that I thought were awesome, I was still left with the feeling like, okay, well, my back was to them part of the time. And it not only doesn't enhance your lesson, but it also can be a behavior management issue. I couldn't see all of them. They couldn't see me, and they also couldn't see all my materials. And of course, like I said, with 20 to 25 first graders, it can be problematic in a variety of different ways. So the e-glass is just perks, and more perks. It's more than just a tool. It's a completely new way to visually engage students. They can see both the material and the teacher, and it creates a more productive lesson every single time. It was actually, what the really cool thing about this e-glass is it was actually created during the pandemic to embrace the new hybrid model of teaching. But I think it's going to be just as effective with in-person teaching as well. So research suggests that learners struggle to absorb new information when they are unable to see the instructor, and the e-glass takes care of all of that. So if you're standing and you have the e-glass in front of you, you can visually engage with every single student. You can use the e-glass to write whatever you want, and it automatically flips it on the other side, so you don't have to worry about that. So the way that I plan on evaluating the effectiveness, of course, I hope that in our April summit, I'm going to share some videos with me using the e-glass. I'm excited about that. But the way I plan on evaluating student engagement and student behavior management will be evaluated by using a digital checklist. Prior to receiving the e-glass, I will use the checklist to mark every time that a student was off task, every time I asked them to refocus or look at the teacher, or asked to focus back on the material on the board. Upon arrival of the learning glass, I'm going to use the same checklist and then compare the two when the evaluation period has ended. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Erin Bowling. I'm at Porter Elementary. If you have any questions regarding the e-glass, feel free to email me at the email below, and I can send you some links and I can tell you more about the e-glass.
Hello and welcome to Sound Matters with WR Tomcats, presented by Anna Burton. What is your problem of practice in implementing a blended learning environment? Our goal is to create an inclusive environment for our deaf and hard of hearing students. WR Castle has students that require an on-site speech pathologist and a sign language interpreter. We want to create an environment that gives them the opportunity to experience school the same way that other students do. How can we help our students? In order to create a more equitable learning environment for our students, I intend to create an environment where my deaf and hard of hearing students can feel equal across the school building. I see every student in my building, so I intend to outfit locations that those students would be in. A sound system for the cafeteria and lights for the gym, library, stream, unite, and special education classrooms will help the students be able to see, if not hear, that the class has ended or that the students need to stop what they are doing. I'm also purchasing sign language alphabets for each classroom so that students and teachers can communicate with each student. While I am working with all the individual students that I am, I've been able to implement this light system. It's come in. So we use the blue light, which means that the student needs to stop and listen because the teacher somewhere is talking in the room and they need to find them. The red light obviously means stop, freeze, everything you're doing, and the green light means that you're good to go on. So we use those three lights predominantly, and it works really well in our cafeteria where the students are enjoying their lunch or they're kind of maybe louder than what they necessarily need to be. It also works really well in gym because, again, while our gym teacher does use her whistle, sometimes she needs the lights to let them kind of see and be aware of what's going on around them. It's become a whole school project, which is really important to us because we're a community-driven school. I've been working with our sign language interpreter and our speech pathologist to make an environment for our kids that will allow them to be successful. Because we're wearing masks, this allows students who are hard of hearing to use mouth reading to know that something has changed and is different. So that's the purpose behind the light system. In each classroom, we now have the alphabet posted somewhere in the room so that our students can communicate with our deaf or hard of hearing students using sign. And here we have Ava Jude, who's one of our students, signing hello.
I have noticed in WR Castle that students who are hard of hearing and students in general are starting to become more active in the school environment. From the alphabet and sign language that to every classroom to the lots that are helping everyone understand it.
How has this changed our school so far? We have Sarah here that's going to kind of use her own words and tell you.
I think the light system is helping because it makes a lot of kids help, like listen and stuff. So if the red one helps the kids and teachers, because the kids can stop talking and the teachers will make the kids listen.
I've noticed a big change in our deaf and hard of hearing students because they're actually more active in the class and they're more active with the classmates. They are able to pick up on the nonverbal cues that we're using either through sign language because, again, the masks are in the way, so it is kind of hard for them to understand us. And I've also noticed that there's a huge difference between the interaction of our hard of hearing students and our students that can hear really well. Sometimes it's even our hard of hearing students are noticing the lights first and they tap on the hearing students so they pay attention, and sometimes it's vice versa. So there's more inclusion kind of in there. It's also seeming to increase the way that our deaf and hard of hearing students interact outside of our classroom. For example, we were on the playground the other day and I actually got to see some students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and our hearing students noticed that the whistle was blown, but the other kids didn't hear it. So they kind of grabbed them and they helped them line up, which I thought was wonderful. Throughout the year, what I'm hoping to have happen is some sort of like data tracking, in that how many times do we as teachers notice more involvement with our students and notice more involvement both in and outside of the classroom.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Cottle. I teach at Port Elementary in Johnson County, and the title of my grant this year is Imagineering. So my problem of practice is loss of engaging and hands-on experiences for students while transitioning in and out of the classroom due to lack of embedded technology as well as limited in-class and take-home building resources. So my title is Imagineering, and what it entails is reimagining engineering in and out of the classroom, because we all know that at any moment, a teacher could have to experience remote learning again. Thankfully, right now, though, we are in school, in person, and we are all very, very pleased with that. So my research questions, the first one is if we are in person. If schools continue in-person learning for the remainder of the school year, will increased blended learning instruction and additional building materials boost student engagement? Now, if the need arises for remote learning, will increased blended instruction in the classroom and supplemental take-home resources preserve engagement and make for an easier transition for students? I have observed students who are discouraged because they didn't get to complete their product due to lack of resources in class. I've also witnessed students in despair whenever the teacher assigned a challenge during remote learning and they didn't have materials on hand at home to complete the project. So that is what brought this all about, and that is where I got my questions from. My stream classroom has an established studio for each subject area. However, even though each discipline has its own designated space, my ultimate goal is to provide an interdisciplinary environment for my students. For example, I will focus on the engineering studio and bring in other subject areas as well as additional technology. In-class materials that could also serve as take-home resources will be beneficial in the event that remote learning is essential. So students will begin by completing a pre-assessment in the form of a short survey, which we just did last week. And this will focus on their feelings and their attitudes toward technology being included in instruction. So this is going to help me, or it did help me, identify their interest levels. So let's go through these. The first question was, which studio listed as your favorite? And as you can see, engineering is here in the green, and it was not the favorite. So that tells me I really want to make it more of a favorite amongst my students. Now, the next one says, how do you feel when teachers include technology into instruction? The blue shows you 65.5% of students said that technology makes learning more meaningful. And if you add 30.4% to the 65.5, technology in the classroom doesn't change my feelings about the lessons. I want to improve that. Number 3, when a teacher includes technology into instruction, are you more excited about the lesson? So we had 36% say extremely more excited, and 43% said a little more excited. Now you combine that, and that's overwhelmingly the information that I need. Technology does make students more excited about instruction. And then I went on to ask about Flipgrid. How do students feel about creating Flipgrid as an assignment? We had 33.5% say, I love Flipgrids for school-related lessons. And then add that 31.2% who said, I kind of like creating Flipgrids. So still, if you put those two together, overwhelmingly, they do appreciate the technology added in. The next one says, would stream class be as exciting without technology? Overwhelmingly, 80.3% of students said no. So we must embed technology in instruction, especially in a stream lab. And number 6, do you feel engaged in your engineering studio? 96.5% of students said yes, they already feel engaged in their engineering studio. So that gives me hope that even more materials will help those other few students be more engaged during engineering. And the last question that I presented students with, are you more engaged in your engineering studio when you have a variety of materials to build with? We had 96% of students say yes, they are more engaged with a variety of materials, which is what I want to do. Okay, now let's get to my engineering studio. This is how this will go. They've completed their pre-assessment. Now it is time to get the materials and see what we can do. So students will be presented with various engineering challenges, and they will use developed rubrics for all activities on the elements of the engineering design process. And so this includes, first, they have to ask, what's the problem? Define the constraints. What is their goal? So most of the time, this is where they have to read their challenge card. If we go back and look right here, here's their challenge card. Each group must complete one blueprint page using the materials provided, use the engineering design process to invent, design, and build a spacecraft. So with that being said, they have to ask, what is my challenge? What do I need to do? The next step is to imagine. They get together, they work as a team, and they brainstorm. They choose a solution. They choose the best one, and they go with it. Step 3, plan. Draw it, make a materials list. This is where the blueprint comes in, as you saw on the challenge card. So before they're even allowed to touch their materials, they have to get together and they have to draw it out, make a blueprint. Step 4, create it, build their product, make it and try it out. What works and what doesn't, which leads us to step 5, improve, make it better. Figure out what worked, what could be improved upon, and modify the design. And then with my grant, I have decided that my engineering studio needs more hands-on materials available, such as magnetic building sticks and blocks, straw connectors for engineering building, Picasso tiles, creative flakes. We have STEM master building toys, the little star flex, puzzle building blocks, just to name a few. So here's some examples of the resources that we are going to be using in our engineering studios. So using these items, students will build and create products based on various challenges presented to them. So once they have finished their products, I will assign them a flip grid. So students will be expected to explain their process in a detailed summary while showing their completed project. I will be able to evaluate the student engagement through classroom observation while students are collaborating and building their products. I will also know if blended learning makes an impact on student engagement by viewing their flip grids. This will tell me how excited they are about their innovations, and this will help me see their engagement. So if remote learning becomes necessary, I will easily be able to evaluate student engagement when viewing their project summaries on their flip grids. Now, the blueprint is part of a rubric that the students have to follow. They will be completed by students on paper. A lot of times I'll give them a blueprint so that they can draw on paper. I also can create a Google Doc or have the students create a Google slide to where they will have to draw it on their computer or their Chromebooks. That's another idea on how to embed technology. And here we have some examples. You can see the blueprint. Students are building after they plan. They are really excited about these creations so far. I cannot wait to see how the materials will help with the other challenges that I will be presenting the students with. So this is just our first round with some of our new materials. Hopefully by spring, I will start to really get an idea of how the embedded technology and the additional resources will help with student engagement in my Streamlab. Hopefully, in-person instructions will continue. We can all keep our fingers crossed on that. And I would like to end by saying, Katie Linder states, blended learning is not just a trend, and we're starting to see technology integrated in really intentional ways. So I hope to prove that planned blended learning should intentionally take place in classrooms to increase student engagement in order to preserve a hands-on learning experience, just in case a transition to remote learning is necessary.
Hi, my name is Lucy Davis, and I'm here to talk to you today about my KVET grant called Popping with Phonics, a multi-sensory approach to phonics and reading. A little bit about myself. I've been a teacher for 11 years, 10 of which have been spent in the classroom and 1 year as an administrator. I've taught all grades, almost all grades. I've taught first, third, fifth, and I served as a middle school assistant principal. I have 2 master's degrees, one in curriculum and instruction and one in K-12 school administration. And I'm currently teaching in Floyd County at Steamboat Elementary, where I am the first grade, where I'm a first grade teacher. It was my work with my first graders that led me to become so passionate about how we learn to read and the science behind how our brains learn how to read, which is why I did Popping with Phonics. So the overview of my presentation today, walking through my implementation, my literature review, and my action plan for how to implement a multisensory approach to teaching phonics. My area of focus for this specific research project is phonemic awareness, decoding and encoding, and reading comprehension, which are 3 of the components of how an individual learns how to read. Just a quick overview of some of the statistics applying to the need for quality reading education. We know that most of our K-12 students in America are at risk for not being proficient readers. 34% of children entering kindergarten lack the basic skills to learn to read, meaning basic alphabet knowledge and basic print concepts. 65% of 4th graders are reading below grade level. That is the national average. And in Kentucky, you can see that that's also our state average. That 65% of our Kentucky 4th graders are not reading at a proficient level. The overreaching statistic, which is alarming, is that 43% of our adults are functionally illiterate, meaning that if they're given an adult level text or even a high school level text, they're not able to process or glean any information from it. Being illiterate also affects your writing capabilities. So these individuals may not be able to sign their name or be able to process reading tasks that are required for daily life, right? Ordering at McDonald's, opening a bank account, things like that. The literature review for learning how to read and the science behind learning how to read is vast. Scientific researchers, and I use that word scientific because neurologists, psychologists, those are some of the forefront leaders in reading science or brain science and relating to how we learn how to read. But the 3 pieces that I picked out that were most applicable to my research project was the need for explicit instruction with specific sequential elements, the multisensory approach, meaning that multiple exposures through multiple avenues help students build quicker pathways in their brain, and then Scarborough's reading rope, which illustrates the complexities involved in learning how to read and comprehend. So I wanted to show you Scarborough's reading rope. This has been around for several years, but it highlights the complexities involved in learning how to read. So we have 2 parts of the rope: word recognition and language comprehension. When we think about learning how to read in primary, and I'm using the word primary to describe kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, when students are learning how to read in primary, these 2 headings, language comprehension and word recognition, are typically taught in separate instructional blocks. Word recognition comes with phonics instruction. Language comprehension comes in the form of reading instruction. So what we're doing is a 2-fold approach to teaching young kids how to read. We're teaching them phonics skills and phonemic awareness in conjunction with rich oral reading comprehension activities, because as students are building up these individual pieces, not only are they becoming more automatic with their phonics skills, but they're also becoming more strategic with the observations that they're making from text. And then once they hit that 2nd, 3rd grade cusp, right, we're no longer learning to read, we're reading to learn. That's when the rope becomes braided. And that's where we really focus on what is the main idea of this informational text? What is the theme of this fable? And so when we think about Scarborough's reading rope, we're really thinking about how can we address these for our students in a way that helps them link together, and that we're using quality instructional techniques to teach what is truly the science of reading. Up here in the corner, I want to draw attention. This is from a book called Equipped in Reading Success, written by Dr. David Kilpatrick, who is a front runner in the brain science behind learning how to read. The American Federation of Teachers, which is the second largest teachers union in the nation, noted the gap between scientific research and classroom practice in 1999. And here we are slowly coming up on 2022. So the disconnect between what we know works and how our brain works and what we're doing in the classroom, there is a gap in that instructional practice. And so when I wrote my research grant for KVEC, I really wanted to hone in and pay attention to those minute details that really push our kids to become stronger readers. This is a term that I've spoken about earlier, science of reading, the idea that I can take the scientific research of how our brain absorbs spoken and written information and turns it into reading and language expression. These are 4 books that I found very critical during my journey. That is far from over, right? You never stop learning about how to teach kids how to read. But Equipped for Reading Success, The Knowledge Gap, Speech to Print, and Uncovering the Logic of English are 4 critical texts in shaping my understanding that first, we have to make sure that our students can hear and differentiate all of the sounds. And then can I turn those sounds that you're hearing into letters, right? And that's a gap. That's a huge jump. And it's a very abstract concept when you're thinking about students who are coming from challenging backgrounds. So that brings me to my action plan and what I implemented in Popping with Phonics, which is the title of my research project. Number 1, we implemented a sequential phonics program. This was something that my school opted to do with our administration. We implemented 2 programs, Really Great Reading and Heggerty Phonics. Heggerty is a phonemic awareness program. It's about 10 minutes a day, and it is all verbal, and it focuses on those spoken sounds, segmenting, blending, and substitution, which are critical skills when you're reading and building words on your own. Really Great Reading is a structured phonics program that, again, focuses on brain science, multiple exposures, multiple ways, and there is a clear order to the skills that we're teaching to our students. The next strategy that I chose to implement was multisensory instructional strategies. A portion of my KVEC money was used to create word work bags that included poppets, Play-Doh, sound boxes, and whisper phones to allow my students to experience words and sounds in many different ways. And then lastly, decodable readers, which are controlled texts that match specific phonics skills. So these were the 3 overreaching components of my research project that I implemented in order to increase my students' reading proficiency. My research question is how does multisensory instruction support growth in reading for first grade students? My caveat that I explained in my application and that I want to make clear now and it goes back to this image right here, Scarborough's reading rope. At the end of my research project, can I say for certain that the instructional strategies that I implemented are the reasons that my kids become proficient readers? Absolutely not. And Scarborough's reading rope clearly illustrates why I cannot say for certain that my instructional strategies are the reason that I create proficient readers. However, because of the strategies that I chose, I know for sure that I'm strengthening a portion of his reading rope. And so it's my hope that the strategies that I pick and implement in my classroom and that I expose my students to are one of the reasons that they build their reading and that they become proficient readers. So implementation, my daily implementation for my research program follows the same pattern. We begin our day with Heggerty, which is a fully vocal program. There's no writing component to it. It's something that can be done in the dark, quote unquote. It comes in a book. There's no technology. We're speaking, we're listening, we're clapping, we're doing it together as a family. And then we transition into Really Great Reading. Within Really Great Reading is where I have intertwined my multisensory instructional strategies. My students get their word work bags every day when we start phonics, and we choose the tool that we're going to use for the day. Most of the time we're using our Poppet and our Play-Doh. We're using Play-Doh to build the words, and we're using Poppets to isolate the sounds. And during the lesson, students are using different tools as we go through different activities. Hello, I'm
I'm Nikki Farler from the Perry County School System. I'm very privileged to be a 2021-2022 KVAC Innovation Grant winner. My project this year is Blue Jay Holders, Building Relationships Through Coding. It is my 13th year teaching in the Perry County School System. I primarily teach kindergarten through 2nd grade, but I also teach the moderate to severe disability students in the resource setting. Robinson Elementary is located in Erie, Kentucky, and has approximately 300 students preschool to 8th grade. Since the pandemic, we've been working, like most schools, in a couple of different settings to deliver instruction to our moderate to severe students. Initially, like most schools, we were all virtual. So starting in March 2020, all of these students went virtual. And now in October, November 2021, many of these students are still on virtual, and some of them are beginning to transition back. Now, this leads us to the situation that's occurring in most schools across America and in Eastern Kentucky. How do we encourage these social skills that have been lost during the pandemic to begin to build those back while encouraging students to branch out from their small social groups and help them to feel supported and secure, to be able to have these interactions and build these relationships? But my grant rationale is focused on that. Prior to the pandemic, building social skills goals and working towards adaptive and social skills goals for our students with moderate to severe disabilities was classroom based. It was classroom based, and then it would branch out beyond the resource setting, and you would begin to do it in a school setting, and then you would begin to look at it at home and community settings as you began to branch out and begin to master these skills. Since these students have been home and all of this instruction is at home, and we're concerned about going out, and we're concerned about being able to move these skills across settings, some of these skills, or most of these skills in some cases, according to parents, have begun to wane, and these students have experienced some loss of skills that they had previously mastered. So in the Perry County School System, we've had a big focus this year on social emotional health and looking at as a staff, social emotional health, as well as really focusing on our students' social emotional health. So due to the pandemic, our severe students have really struggled with not only their social skills goals and the ability to be able to do that, but also helping them realize that it's safe to come back to school. And when their parents feel that it's safe for us to come back, and it's safe for us to be around people. So this leads us to our research question. How can we increase social interactions with our moderate to severe students while increasing the STEM education among our lower primaries? As a small school, we don't have access to a STEM lab or a STEM teacher, and STEM instruction happens, there's more of a focus on that for our older students. So since the pandemic and the focus on technology became even more in the forefront, we began to realize that it's very important that we begin to introduce coding and these STEM concepts at a younger age. And lower primary is great because most of our moderate to severe students love to interact with their kindergarten and 1st graders. And prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, they've been on Google Meet with some of them, reading stories and interacting with them to help encourage these social relationships. So my plan of action. Another great thing that KVAC has been encouraging is Lego robots. Our team, with the help of KVAC and Perry Promise, has been created at Robinson with our 3rd through 8th graders, I think primarily focusing on our 3, 4, 5 students. So using those students who have STEM knowledge gained from the Lego Robot Club, we're pairing our moderate to severe students with one of those Lego mentors, and they are helping them learn the equipment that we have ordered and purchased from the grant. Once these students have been paired and feel comfortable with the equipment, then they will be paired with small groups from our kindergarten classes and introduce this equipment to the kindergarten classes. As the year goes on, the goal being that the moderate to severe students begin to take more of a role within the group and the Lego mentor can begin to step back. The year will culminate in Lego robot races with our Lego team and our kindergarten classes and our moderate to severe. With our grant budget of $1,000, I've purchased several different STEM activities for our students, starting from easier, less intense activities, kind of weighing up into more coding situations. So we're starting with RD3000 educational robot. We bought 2 of those. These are the robots. We've seen that. I saw a similar one, but they were out of stock at a previous KVEC Innovation Conference, in which the robot is controlled by the pen. So in the first group meetings, we will work with our robots, just encouraging the students to write their names and write their letters and things that they are working on within class. And so they can show those master skills to the groups and be able to interact with the robot in more of a low-key situation. And then we also purchased a Dash Wonder voice activated robot. Our speech therapist is actually really excited about this because the robot can help those students with some speech and communication skills. These also will need the iPad. We purchased 1 iPad. From previous KVEC grants, I had 2 more iPads, so that's going to help us be able to do multiple groups at one time. I also was able to purchase the Osmos Genius Starter Kit and the Osmos Coding Starter Kit. These are leveled up situations that we will see later on in the grant, but it introduces academic skills, and then we also have some coding skills as well. I also got the Osmos Genius Starter Kit as well as the Little Genius Starter Kit. So we will be able to work with the kindergarten students on specific skills that they need and to be able to reinforce the skills that they are learning within the classroom. Here's a look at our project timeline. Also, one thing I left off on the KVEC budget, on the group budget for the project, was our coding critters. We were able to buy 3 coding critters, which are robot critters that have stories along with them, and the students program the critter to go along with the story. So it will encourage our moderate to severe students to help read the story and read the story to the group. And then it will also encourage fine motor and coding along the story with our kindergarten students. So we're really excited about those coding critters. Now, as far as project timeline, in October, we have all of our equipment ordered, and some of it is starting to come in. And then our moderate to severe students were able, just this last week, to be able to begin to interact with our kindergartners. They helped with the Halloween candy school trick or treat, since we weren't allowed to have students. Students bring in their parents. Our moderate to severe students handed out candy for our lower primary students. And then in November, you will see we'll be getting to pair off with our Lego students, and the RD and Wonder robots. They'll begin to interact with those, and the Lego students will work with our moderate to severe students in November to make sure that they understand how to work the equipment. And then hopefully by Thanksgiving, which is the real goal, but I put it in December, the real goal of being that we begin to have these groups right before Thanksgiving, which is also a real goal because some of our moderate to severe students will start to work on their alternate assessment windows, and that will be a real goal for them. Once they get finished with that, we can do the groups. In December, our moderate to severe mentor students will begin to do will continue those small groups. And then in January and February, we want to add the voice activated as well as the starter kit for the Osmos Genius. And then in March, April, the goal of being that the moderate to severe students will begin to take more of a leadership role in the groups, and the Lego mentor students will be able to step back. What we're really excited about is in May, having our coding races with our Lego robots to celebrate the end of the year and the end of our kindergarten coding groups for the year. Our students are very excited about this, and our kindergartners are very pumped to try out some new things. So we're excited too. And all of this is because the great relationship that we have with KVAC. Again, we really want to thank KVAC for giving me and my students and I this opportunity to be able to dive into coding while also building these relationships that have been lacking during the pandemic. If you have any questions about my project or the products that we're using, the equipment that we're using, or how we're making this work in our school, by all means, email me. My email is down here at the bottom. Thank you again, KVAC, for this great opportunity for my students and my school. Hello, I'm Nikki Farler from the Perry County School System, and I'm very pleased and honored to be a 2021-2022 KVAC Innovation Grant recipient. My project for this year is Voices of the Troublesome, an Appalachian Literature Library and Podcast. Hello, like I said before, I'm Nikki Farler, and this is my 13th year of teaching in the Perry County Schools. This is my 4th KVAC Innovation Grant, and I am a learning and behavioral disorders teacher in kindergarten to 2nd grade. I also teach in a resource setting with students with moderate to severe disabilities. But welcome to Robinson Elementary. Robinson is located in Erie, Kentucky on the banks of the Troublesome Creek. Robinson is home to approximately 300 students preschool to 8th grade. Robinson has a unique history and has served the Erie community for 100 years. Therefore, Robinson is the perfect place to explore Appalachian culture and really look at the history of the school and our place in Appalachian culture in our community. Our students have a limited knowledge of the region culture and have very little exposure to books that depict the world in which they live. All too often in our books and the things that we present to our students, we expose them to cultures all around the world, and yet our students have very little respect or knowledge of their own Appalachian culture. This generation has experienced a cycle of opioid abuse that has affected the family structures throughout our community. So we are used to family traditions and stories being handed down generation to generation. And because of our opioid crisis and other things in our region, we have fractured generations and families, and these stories and traditions are being lost. Coupled with that, this generation has a particularly special point of view in the fact that they are being educated and growing up in the world during a pandemic, unlike most people have ever seen. So their Appalachian point of view is completely different from that of their parents or even their teachers. This brings us to our research question. How might we increase the students of Robinson's knowledge of Appalachian culture while also giving them the sense that their stories are being heard and that their points of view are just as valid as important as people from other places and other cultures? Now, our plan of action. Excuse me. After consulting with a local bookstore that focuses on Appalachian culture, and Appalachian literature classroom libraries will be cultivated for each section of Robinson Elementary. So there's K2, there's 3, 5, and then there's 6, 7, 8. In library class, the students will be read books such as When I Was Young in the Mountains, Silver Packages, and The Book Lady. All of these will allow the students to express different parts of their lives and different experiences that they have had and compare them to the book. As we experience and explore these books, we are going to work with our SCLP students to create podcasts with parent permission to describe the journeys that these students have taken in their own Appalachian experiences. Our project timeline. In October, we have ordered our books, podcast equipment, and our crafts. All of that has been ordered. And in November, we're going to take some time and actually create our libraries for our classes, and then also the section within our own library. And then in December, we are going to focus on silver packages. And with some of our craft money that was in our budget, we are doing Appalachian Christmas crafts for our community Christmas tree. And if we are allowed to have a Christmas play this year, we're also focusing that on Appalachian culture and a down-home Christmas. In January, this is where we introduce When I Was Young in the Mountains. Students 3 through 8 will write their own versions of the book using their experiences and paralleling portions of the book to their own lives, and we will begin to look at stories to be featured in our podcast. The actual podcast will begin recording in February, as well as we're going to do some Christmas stories as well from Silver Packages, focusing on, we have a plethora of area community knowledge with 2 of our teachers that have taught at Robinson for 40 years. So having those Christmas experiences just from a Robinson Elementary perspective is going to be very neat and a wonderful way to honor these educators that have shaped the community of Erie for so many years. And then in March, we're going to look at the students will read The Book Lady. This is where I want the students to be able to compare their pandemic experiences. In The Book Lady, just like the popular, more adult book, this depicts when they would ride the horses out to homes and the librarians would deliver books. I would really like the students to see the parallels in that during their quarantine experiences and lockdown experiences during the pandemic, and how we weren't on horses, but we were on buses and cars to come to see them and deliver lunch meals and deliver their school supplies and check on them throughout the pandemic. So really getting those students to really think about the parallels of these situations that they've experienced in this millennium compared to the situations in the book. Now, in our budget, the bulk of our budget was spent on the Appalachian Authors libraries for our school. But in order to do the podcast, we got a podcast bundle and a touchscreen Chromebook. We also used a small bit of our money for craft supplies so that we could do some Appalachian crafts to go along with the Silver Packages book. So the bulk of our budget was spent on books such as When I Was Young in the Mountains, Silver Packages, Jack and the Wonder Beans, The Book Lady, The Salamander Ball. All of these are books that our students don't really have experiences with, and we really want to be able to give that to our students. We are also very blessed to have a local children's author, Nancy Kelly Allen. We added her books to our Appalachian Authors Library, and in a partnership with Perry Promise, she will be coming and seeing our students and discussing writing and being an author and Appalachian writing with our 3, 4, 5 students in the spring, and then also doing some readings with our K2 students in library class. So, measuring outcomes. Students taking and passing AR tests with in the Appalachian literature section will be tracked. Currently, baseline data with this project to see that increase. And then participation in our Appalachian cultural events will also be measured and taken into account. If you want to know more about the activities that we're implementing in our school and how we're using these Appalachian books and Appalachian authors, or if you want to hear our podcast, you can email me my contact info is down at the bottom. Again, I would like to thank KVAC for this opportunity for my students to really dive into their Appalachian culture and see the uniqueness of their own points of view. Thanks again, KVAC.
Hi, my name is Candace Fields, and I'm here to go over a little bit about my innovation grant for the CABcast. It's a newscast that Jenkins is going to have up and running in our school system. The first step that I wanted to talk about was identifying my area of focus. Biggest thing that's going on right now is trying to build a culture, a positive culture here at Jenkins. We've had so much happen, and it's been such a technical world the last couple of years that our culture has really declined. We have no positivity. Kids don't want to do things. They don't feel like they belong. Teachers feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like communication is happening like it should. So one of the big things was try to increase student interest, communication, one of the big things. Have the students be accountable, motivated, and have a reason to come to school. And while they're doing that, learn how to communicate effectively, because they will communicate for the rest of their lives. Plus, they will learn some skills that they may enjoy learning and not really understand that they're learning. The big research question was, what are the ways in which we empower students to build a positive culture, become independent, and learn skills? What can we do to change what's going on? And when this was available, I thought, well, this will be it. Have a little CABcast, teach these kids to watch the news, get them involved, learn what the news is. Today's children and most young adults don't even watch the news, don't even know what's going on. So maybe with them getting involved and having to do the research and learn how to do this, they would take that stance. Some more things about my issue was motivation, how to get these kids motivated. So how do we get them motivated again? How do we get them want to come to school, want to do well, want to succeed? So when they have this ownership of independence, having them do things on their own instead of being spoon-fed everything so that they can learn and do things without someone telling them every step. Communication, big thing, because obviously we need to learn to communicate. That's one of the biggest things that's brought up at every meeting, whether it's with students and student council or with the staff, is that they're not communication. And changing the school culture. How are we going to change that so that it's positive? Highlight the things that are going on, because a lot of kids don't even know. We have such a issue with students being able to have transportation from sporting events or even after school activities, that maybe if we had this filmed or shown, then maybe they'll have some exposure to that. Then came developing a plan of action. First thing we did was fill out the grant approval form, got approved for it, come up with a CABcast idea, started looking at other schools who had the newscast program, and it was beneficial and effective. The kids seemed to enjoy it. Use the students to teach each other. We start with upperclassmen, then move down to lowerclassmen, then middle school, then elementary school, so that it's a continuous learning process. And once students are responsible enough, they feel like they take these and they become owners to these, and they own this whole production. So they take it and they know that they're the ones that are responsible for it. We're going to put it on our school TV. We have school TV throughout the school. We have the big computer monitors in our classrooms that we can run. We have them in the cafeteria and in the lobby area. We're going to put it on the school website and, of course, social media. We want to diminish the communication barriers, and obviously I got some typos on this so that kids know and teachers know what's going on, because you can't hear announcements many of the times when it's done. So one of the big things would be to have this out there so the kids can see it on a regular basis. And of course, build up our school culture, put out the positive vibes on there, tell what's going on in the school, build it up, and strive to be on there. Implement, plan, collect, and analyze. We chose the students, and we're working with them on learning, watching newscasts, writing newscasts, doing that kind of stuff, so that we can start recording those and getting those up and making them effective. We've had a lot of deterrents here lately. We had 2 weeks of virtual. We had 2 weeks that we were closed. We've lost 2 faculty members, so it's been a long and drawn out process, but we're hoping to get this going. Finally got all of our materials in and building this and getting kids started. So it's been a lot of obstacles, but we're overcoming those. One of the big things is to make sure that we're getting feedback from the students, and a lot of times you can just do that by word of mouth. We also want to send out a couple of forms so the kids can do that and rate how this is going and if they pay attention. And of course, look at our comments on social media, because everybody's going to like or not like or have something to say about things. So, and constantly look for changes. Ask the kids what they want to see, what they want to have done. Look at how other schools are doing it. Use some of their positive impacts. Communicate results. We're going to make sure that we record all episodes, put those out there for the whole school and community to see. Hopefully it will impact our classroom activities, because they'll know what's going on, and attendance and participation, of course, will be greatly affected. We want to encourage our administration and our faculty to make sure they comment on us, tell us, encourage us to keep going, especially the students, and get any kind of feedback from the community as well. I've told you about how we're going to continue reflection and plan a new cycle. We want to continue this going. We want to trickle down effect, have it start with the high school, move down to the middle school, then eventually move to the elementary school, so that all students have impact and all teachers do, and they can learn, so that next year makes it a little easier. And we want to continuously have this going throughout the school years, not just for a few months. This right here is something that will eliminate a lot of barriers and stuff, plus give kids that time to express themselves differently and maybe have success in different areas instead of just the classroom.
My name is Liza Hilton. I'm the speech language pathologist for Perry County Schools. I work at West Perry Elementary School and Buckhorn Schools. And my project today is a sensory area for students with special needs. Why a sensory area, do you ask? Well, change is difficult for almost everyone. And we handle change best if we are sort of expecting it, or it occurs within the context of a predictable routine. For example, this weekend, the time will change and we will go back an hour. And as adults, we know that, so we can sort of prepare and get ready for that. But students with special needs, they have trouble adjusting to some of those things. Students with special needs, a predictable routine allows them to feel safe and in control, and it allows them to better deal and handle with different changes in their life. Of course, lots of changes cannot be avoided, and that's why we try to offer students with special needs a predictable routine as a foundation. That way, when a speed bump comes up or a roadblock occurs, that's what we call it at school, a speed bump or a roadblock, then we are better equipped to handle those things. Students get overstimulated. Overstimulation, emotional regulation, and attention is our problem of practice in implementing our learning environment. We have students with special needs who have difficulty paying attention. They become overstimulated with things in their environment, whether it be noises, sounds, lighting, just lots of environmental factors. We also have students that have difficulty expressing themselves and regulating their emotions. And all of these things, all of these factors cause them to be overwhelmed in class and unable to learn. So, as we know, overstimulated students are not engaged. They're not learning what's being taught. They often engage in avoidance behaviors. Some will do self-harm, hitting themselves, biting. Others will just, when they're overstimulated, they will withdraw from peers. They'll withdraw from activities. They'll try to escape just to get out of doing what is necessary and doing their tasks that are expected at hand. A lot of these special needs students require frequent breaks where they can move around and they can have some sensory experiences. They can experience some calming activities, engage in some sensory activities and some mindful activities to help them out. I would like to create a sensory area located in a common space. And in that sensory area, we'll provide lots of tactile, visual, auditory input, just different things for the students to use as they need. This area would provide students a sensory space with activities to help them organize themselves, calm themselves, become more mindful of their emotions, and just assist with coping and just traumatic situations. Sometimes they just need that little bit of escape, that little bit of sensory input. And the students will be able to interact with all or just part of the sensory area. You know, it'll be available. They can interact with their favorite parts. What inspired me to want to create this sensory area, I'll tell you. Some really wonderful educators and my friend, the occupational therapist at our sister school, East Perry Elementary School, they wrote a grant and received funding from KVEC a few years ago, and they created an entire sensory walk. It goes around, it's within the special needs suite at their school. So it's pretty cool. Let me show you. This is my inspiration. This is one of their small hallways. Just look at all that sensory input. The kids can touch the noodles. That's different. The different colors have different textures on the wall. Down here in this area, it's one of those squishy, I don't know, just a really neat sensory squishy, kind of like an oil and water sort of thing that they can play with. Here's another part. It has this really cool bubble aquarium that kids can look at and use. There's just different textures on the wall, as you can see. There's some gears and like a little Plinko sort of thing. And this is an octopus that the OT cut out and attached to the wall and put different sensory, different textures and tactile things on it. What resources and personnel do we need to implement the area? We'll purchase some sensory materials that we can place on the wall for student interaction. We would need a staff member to observe, provide direction, show them how to interact and use the wall. The sensory area can be used during transition when a student needs a break, or we see that they're getting really overstimulated and a problematic behavior might start to begin. before it escalates, maybe we can take them out and let them use the sensory area for calming. Where am I going to do this? Okay, this is a picture at West Perry Elementary. This is one of the hallways here, and I took a picture of the outside so you can sort of get an idea of where I'm going to put it. This is the hallway view, and this is the actual vestibule that I would like to just turn into an entire sensory area. We don't have the luxury of a full hallway like they did at our sister school, but in this entire little area, we would like to use, create sensory materials in a sensory area. The door on the left goes into the FMD suite, and the door on the right goes to our alternative school. So we're looking at some students who could really benefit from using these sensory activities and sensory materials. What question will guide our study? I want to look at, will a sensory break between learning activities or during transitions allow students to regulate their behavior? What outcomes will prove that our innovation was a success? Hopefully, there will be a decrease in the amount of time dealing with inappropriate behavior. How will we measure those outcomes? For our FMD students or our students in the special needs classroom, we already use a behavior log. So we will observe and analyze behavior logs that are already in place. We'll observe the students, analyze behavior logs, of course, attain some student feedback, and we'll watch for preferred sensory activities. Our kids with PECs, I will create some cards showing different activities so that they can request, they can use a card or use their AAC device to request that they, or let us know that they need to go outside in the sensory area to help out. So by using PECs and just behavior, that's what we'll do to measure our outcomes. Now, our budget, we took the $1,000, we broke it down. We hope to get an optic curtain light, one of those really neat bubble aquariums. We'll need some sensory tape, some silly shapes and circles, the touch and change boards. That's what I was trying to say, the ones that look like the oil and water that's sort of mixed up. A sensory gel maze, squishy handprints, sensory discs, gears, fiber noodles, and of course we'll need some hardware and some attachments to attach some of the things to the wall. And I just want to thank KVEC for the opportunity to create the sensory area for our students, and hopefully I'll be able to show you a before and after shot or a before and after picture, and some of the students using the sensory area in the spring.
All right, my project is called Water versus Dirt, Which One Will Win? I'm Gretel Jones, and I teach preschool at Jackson Independent School. All right, my research question is aquaponics an effective way to grow food versus traditional gardening? Prior to this grant, I had an outdoor garden for my preschool group, and so we grew things outside in dirt, and we kind of emphasized that part of growing plants. But I decided that I wanted to try something new this year, so I applied for the grant to try to grow plants in water. So my action plan includes, I'm going to set up an aquaponics system within the classroom. I'm going to set up a small greenhouse inside so that my students can grow things in dirt, but I'm also going to put a greenhouse outside so we can start new plants for the garden outside. I kind of want them to see the life cycle of plants throughout the year. So if we do the greenhouse inside, they're going to see that too as they plant things in dirt. But they're also going to watch things grow in water with the aquaponics system. We're also going to plant some winter crops outside just so that we can get started with comparing and contrasting growing in water and growing in dirt. We're going to plant a tree outside in the classroom, in the outside classroom, and we're going to use chalkboards and things like that out there just to document things. I also put into my grant to get an iPad so that the students can document growth. They can take pictures, they can use apps that help them learn about gardening. We're also going to use a webcam so that when we're off from school, hopefully we can live stream some things so that they can see what's going on in their garden, both in the aquaponics system and also in the garden outside, just so that they can see what's going on when they're away from school. Some of the objectives that I have are children will begin to understand living and non-living things and be able to group things accordingly. Children will use sorting and reasoning skills as they record changes in plant growth. The children will use their senses to make observations and document these observations. Children will have hands-on knowledge of plants and aquatic animals through observing the correlation between plants and fish within the aquaponic system. And children will understand or have a better understanding of where our food comes from and how they can grow their own food. And so as they use the aquaponic system, they're going to see the plants growing in the water, and hopefully we'll be able to harvest some things. Whereas when we're just doing the garden outside, a lot of the growth of our plants is during the summer months when the kids are not at school and they don't get to see the actual middle part. So that's why I kind of wanted this aquaponic system, because they're going to see plants growing all year long and they're going to get to harvest more. Usually we plant things in the spring, and then during the summer months they grow, and then usually in the fall we can harvest some things. But this way, with this aquaponic system, I'm hoping to have the harvest during the time when my students are there, and then they're going to get to see the actual blooms and things like that that come on plants, and really get to see the full life cycle. So that's my goal with this system. And then it's also just learning how fish and animals relate and help plants, and how plants help animals, and kind of looking at that correlation, and I'm hoping they'll get to see that. And then also just taking care of the animals, taking care of the fish, and taking care of both gardens. You know, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a challenge for them, you know, as they take on the responsibility of growing things.
Hi, my name's Goldie Callahan, and today I am going to talk to you about my virtual reality field trips. Okay, first off, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Goldie Callahan. I am currently a 5th and 6th grade language arts and social studies. I teach at Beaver Creek Elementary, which is in Knott County, Kentucky. Not only am I the 5th and 6th grade am I the teacher of these students, but I'm also a mother of one of these students. So that's kind of how I came up with this, is because my child was saying, Mom, I miss field trips. I miss learning about different things and seeing different experiences. So the technology in the field trips, so during COVID-19, my school, like many other schools, we have been limited on our field trips. We personally at Beaver Creek Elementary are not taking any field trips currently. Last year, the only field trip that I know of was our 8th grade students, and I believe that is how it is going to be this year as well. Our 8th grade students will take a day trip as part of their 8th grade trip. So field trips have long been used to reinforce student learning. And what I mean by that is, like, when we're teaching something in the classroom, yes, It is great for the students to experience what we're teaching and all of that. But when we get to take them on field trips, we get to bring especially history alive, or what we're talking about and what we are teaching in class. So I have noticed that the students are not retaining the information as much as I would like to have seen them retain the information that we are learning in school because of the world around them. Because not only does the field trips get the students out of the school and learning and getting their hands on things and experiencing we're teaching in the classroom, but it also has given them a way to see the world, especially for students at Beaver. I know a lot of these students have never been outside of Knott County, and the way that they experience this is the field trips that are offered through the school. So I am looking at if there is a way for us to connect the students with a field trip by using technology that would allow them to still experience these same things that our students were missing when we had to adapt to the new COVID world. So how can I help my students? Well, recently I've learned that Nearpod, I've used Nearpod for quite a while, but I recently learned that Nearpod provides a virtual reality field trip option for multiple lessons. This is when I got the idea to take my students on virtual field trips. So to make this happen, I will already use my existing Nearpod subscription. I will need 2 Oculus headsets. And these are the very popular virtual reality sets, and several of my students have them already at home. So I will also be opening that world to them, showing them how to access these field trips and how to use what they would typically use for a gaming device that they would also be able to use for a learning device. I will need to purchase the virtual reality sets, a storage case to protect them, and a charging stand to ensure that the Oculus sets are charged. One of the things that has changed, though, is when you're looking at the things, when I first was doing research for my project, this came together as a bundle. Well, now it doesn't, so you have to kind of buy everything individually. I will implement this study with my 5th and 6th grade students here at Beaver Creek Elementary. So the way that this study will work is I will give my students a pre-assessment that is going to be over the topic that we're covering and that we're going to be experiencing with the field trip. I will cover that, then I will cover that topic, and I will be choosing the topic based off of what is in the Nearpod lesson and what I have available here, and I'll be covering the same content, but I will make sure that there is a virtual reality lesson that is already established on Nearpod. And as I'm teaching, I'm going to make sure that I hit the same points. So like if my 5th grade students are, for example, working on their compelling question of why is old stuff so important within their social studies unit, then I'm going to use those lessons, but also to make sure that I'm covering the same topic, I will also find a virtual reality lesson that also connects to one of my sources that we will be using for that. So after my lesson is delivered, I will give the students an assessment. After the assessment is completed, the virtual lesson will then go on. So then I will have have the students go on, experience the virtual field trip, and then they will take the same assessment that they had completed before. Students will ideally complete the virtual reality lesson and the assessment. They'll ideally, what they will do is I will deliver the lesson and then give the assessment. And then they will have the virtual reality and then have the assessment. So the assessment for what I had taught in class would happen, the virtual reality trip, and then the assessment for the virtual reality field trip would then occur. Ideally, the two assessments and the virtual reality trip would happen in the same day. In an ideal world, when I would have all day with my students, everything would happen in one day. But as we know, we are very limited with our time with our students. This study will occur during the 2021-2022 school year. This study will begin after the fall FIRESummit and will end prior to the spring FIRESummit. And the study will occur during the normal school day because no student likes to come to school after school. How I will compare my data is I will compare the results to the pre-assessment, the post-assessment for the in-person lesson, and then the post-assessment from the virtual reality trip. What I will be checking here for is for knowledge that is gained that they may not have already had. And then I will also be comparing the lesson, the in-person lesson to the virtual reality lesson, and seeing if it has helped expand my students' knowledge and that they may have been able to answer one or more questions that they did not answer prior to. If a majority of the students can answer at least one additional question correct or in greater depth. So if we are talking about like, why is old stuff important? And I go, just old stuff is important because it's stuff that's happened in the past, versus old stuff is important because we see that that inventor X invented this and it expanded to help our country grow or whatever. They're able to expand that more, then I would consider both of these scenarios a success. I look forward to presenting this data in the spring 2022 FIRESummit, and I look forward to seeing all of you then, and hopefully in person, and we won't have to be doing this virtually. If you have any questions or feedback you would like to share with me, you can email me at goldie.callahan@knott.kyschools.us. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if you have any questions, please email me and let me know.
Hello, my name is Martina Lutz. I am from Flat Gap Elementary School. I teach K through 6 music class, and my grant is entitled Music Through Literacy and Play. The play is in quotation marks because it's going to indicate both the usage of childhood play and plays as in a performance art. Literacy through music and play, a study on music and the arts and its effect on reading. My area of focus and research question. After an unprecedented year of teaching due to COVID, many children are now below grade level in both reading and language skills. Music is an essential component to early literacy development. Currently, a lack of equipment and resources makes it difficult for me to integrate a blended learning environment into my K-6 music classes. There are 5 main components of reading: phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Music, nursery rhymes, sing-alongs, all of these things help to develop all 5 of those components. Music and all its components have a direct influence on overall literacy. Music accelerates brain development, particularly in the acquisition of language development and reading skills. Music trains the mind and the body to work in sync. So, my methodology and my guiding question: when engaging in strong musical curriculum, will students improve their reading and language skills? So, this year, I would love to implement the use of play and plays to help promote literacy. Music play for younger students helps with scaffolding skills essential for early readers. We will work with patterns, echoing, language acquisition, listening skills, and memory when we learn about music. For my older students, I believe things like putting on plays and concerts will help promote literacy through the use of spoken word, dialogue, poetry, and lyrics. I also believe music through singing and performance will help improve fluency in these students. With this grant, I will purchase some sound equipment for our stage, as well as sheet music, short plays, music-related storybooks, and puppets. To implement my plan, collect and analyze my data. Students will gain better understandings of letter sounds and blended letter sounds. Students will begin to connect the rhythm and rhyme used in music with the rhythm and rhyme necessary for reading. Older students will read music and speak dialogue more fluently. Younger students will become more engaged in reading and song through the use of storytelling, retelling, and acting out, as well as nursery rhymes. Okay, I will use a sample population from each grade level. I will use their current reading scores as a baseline. Once the materials are received and utilized, I will have students take the same reading tests. And for our school, most students are using like STAR, and they have fluency checks, reading eggs. And I'm going to compare this data and chart any recurring patterns on growth across grade levels. By using students of all grade levels and different reading levels in my sample population, I will hope to see patterns that have emerged in progressing reading scores. Now, there are some biases and flaws in my methodology. I can't have a true controlled group because a lot of great kindergarten and first grade teachers know that singing songs and nursery rhymes do help with reading. So to have a true control group, I would have children who have never been exposed to these things, and that will not be the case. As well as the fact that it would be unfair to create a control group that didn't get to play with the puppets in the storybooks. So what I'm just going to have to do is use the data and look for patterns where certain things, like maybe their fluency was moving up slightly, and then all of a sudden there's a big gain after we implement this. And to help further validate my study, I've been looking at some other studies that have used more of a control, such as the R.L. Gordon 2015 study that was in Frontier in Psychology, and he found gains in reading after implementing a music program, and he had more of a control group than I do, and as well as things that have been studied and cased in the Journal of Research in Music Education. So again, there are some biases, and I am well aware of that, but at the same time, I would hate to be the child who got told, no, your group doesn't get to use the puppets. For my budget, some ideals of the things that I purchased were a monitor for the stage. We have some mics and we have some speakers that go back to the house for the audience, but the kids don't really have any way of hearing themselves on stage. So I thought to better assist them and help with the fluency of speaking dialogue, that I would get a monitor so that when they do small plays or music, they can hear themselves. And that was the bigger purchase. The other things I purchased were storybooks that have matching puppets, such as What Does the Fox Say? And I've got a fox puppet, Farmyard Beat, and I've got a set of farm animal finger puppets to go with that. The Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly is one of my favorites. The cat came back, and I got a cat puppet so they can act that out. I also bought a small, it's kind of like a pop-up tent, but it's a puppet theater, and as well as some different musical plays, such as Presents on Parade. This one already came in. It's a mini musical, so we've got both music lyrics to work with and dialogue.
or kid skits. It's got 4 different kid skits, and they both contain spoken dialogue and musical songs with lyrics. So those are just some ideas of the things that I used my money to purchase. I do not know whether or not you all will be able to ask any questions. But if you do have questions, or if you even have ideas on how I can take out some of the biases in my research, you can send those to me at martina.lutz@johnson.kyschools.us. It's Martina, MARTINA, LUTZ, @johnson.kyschools.us. I look forward to telling you how my research went, and hopefully my kids will be better readers because of it.
Hello, my name is Tina McKenzie. I am a first grade teacher at Central Elementary, and I am running a grant to receive Clevy Mouse or Clevy clickers for first grade students in our school. And I'll go ahead and present my all right, so here is the my presentation. We are first grade Click Here for Central Elementary students in first grade. And the reason that we decided to do this was that we came up with a problem, or we were facing a problem of students having a mouse that looked like this up here in the corner, one of these Apple clickers that does not have a clear place for them to put their fingers and click. And a lot of them don't know which finger to use. And so, and also the mouse is not the correct size for little people's hands. So the problem that we found was we could not be for sure if our assessments were that we were getting the correct data. So were the kids actually showing us what they know, or was it a problem of not knowing how to operate the technology that they were given? So we want to know, will it help if we give them a mouse like this Clevy mouse down here at the bottom that has clear instructions on where to put your fingers and where things are that you use to scroll and go up and down on the page? So will giving this technology to students facilitate active learning across the curriculum? According to research, students from kindergarten to second grade have shown difficulty in operating technology using either the touchpad on a Chromebook or just a mouse on a desktop computer. They don't know how to click and drag. They're not familiar with using this type of technology. They're still developing motor skills in writing and using utensils such as writing utensils, pencils, scissors, crayons, and of course, technology. So we need to provide something for them that is going to more accurately fit their hand. Because as you know, they're still growing and developing their bones and all that stuff in their hands, that they don't have full control of their little fingers yet. Children this age have been accustomed to using tablets or iPads. So they're used to touch screens. And when they come to school and we put a computer in front of them, most of them have never seen such things. And so they don't know how to operate them. They're unfamiliar with it. They don't know where to put their fingers. They don't know how to use the technology. So when they come into school, what's the first thing that we do? We ask them to take an assessment to show what you know, so that we know, okay, where do I need to start in my instruction with this child? What do they need from me? What do I need to provide for this kid? And I'm going to use technology to assess them so that, I can analyze the data and then I can plan instruction for them. So in order to do that, we're giving them technology that they don't know how to use and expecting them to show us that they what they know, and that can skew our results, our data, and we're not going to be able to accurately assess these students, because we can't really for sure be for sure if it's a problem with the students not knowing the content, or if it's a problem with them not knowing how to operate the technology. So we have to provide them with technology that is simple and easy for them to use. And then once they become familiar with these tools, then we'll be able to know what knowledge that they've acquired. And then we'll be able to accurately interpret our data, and we'll be sure or feel confident that it's not just operator error, that this is truly what this child knows. I can go forth in planning my groups and planning my instruction and give these kids what they need. And using technology independently too. That's definitely one thing that we want in these lower grade levels, is that they're able to use technology independently in the classroom. All right, so what's our action plan? Our students have already been using laptops in the classroom. We have Chromebooks that have the touchpad, and they've already been using those. They've already been taking assessments. So we will be able to look at the data from those early assessments that we've taken at the beginning of the year, and to see if once we receive the Clevy mouse, if the scores are improving due to the Clevy mouse. Obviously, if we have a student that would prefer or is doing well with using the touchpad, or the regular mouse, then we'll just let them go ahead and continue using that one. But if they are showing some progress with that, then we're going to continue using the Clevy mouse. Our timeline on this, we're giving assessments daily, weekly, and monthly in the classroom on computers. So we will analyze that data to determine if the students are improving because of the technology. And then after they have acquired mastery skills with using the Clevy mouse, then we will gradually wean them off of that into using the touchpad or just a regular mouse, and then even using the touchpad on a Chromebook. Our results, how will we know if it's working or not? We are going to look at assessment data to see if students' scores are improving, and determine if it's because of the technology that they're using. And then obviously at the end of our 9 weeks grading period, we'll be able to look at our diagnostic data to see if those scores are improving. And then we will know if the technology is helping the students.
My project is called From Kitchen to Classroom. My name is Whitney Navarez. I am a self-contained moderate to severe disabilities teacher here at East Perry Elementary. I currently service 10 students. They are kindergarten through 8th grade. We have 4 self-contained classrooms at East Perry. There's altogether about 40 students that are going to be impacted from the materials that I purchased with this grant. My problem of practice. How can I help students with moderate to severe disabilities learn and retain life skills that are going to help them become more independent adults? For research on this topic, I went straight to my parents. We discussed academic skills and we discussed functional skills, and all of my parents prioritized the functional skills over the academic skills. I think for about 90% of my parents, if they could, we would only focus on functional skills, but we do have to focus on academics. I collected data on individual students to determine the specific skills that they needed. And this is what I observed. So we need help pouring beverages from a pitcher, sorting groceries, folding towels, washing dishes, measuring, sorting utensils, sweeping, mopping, and kitchen safety. My plan of action, I plan on using discrete data collection. I will record a virtual task analysis that will be pre-recorded, and then we will do repetitive practice of certain skills, and I will use the system of Leaf's prompts to help them become more independent. And I plan on collecting data on 5 students. The resources needed are my paraprofessionals. Couldn't survive without them. We have a full kitchen here at East Perry that we will be using. I will use Google Classroom, a Chromebook to record myself going through the task, and I will need kitchen supplies that have been ordered through the grant, and task analysis, and later on we will need ingredients for meals and snacks that we plan on preparing. So for the instruction, my virtual task analysis will be pre-recorded. I plan on doing step-by-step videos of these skills, and that may be like pouring a glass of water from a pitcher, pouring milk from a gallon, sweeping, doing dishes, all of that we will break down step by step. And I will pre-record that, so my students who are virtual, I can upload those on Google Classroom. If a student is quarantined, they can watch those lessons from home. And I have some students that enjoy homework, or they can go back and watch those lessons for homework and practice at home. And also snow days, they can, if we are NTI due to snow or something, then the students can get on Google Classroom and they can watch those videos and practice skills when we're not in school. The timeline for this, my materials have been ordered. Once they arrive, we will begin immediately utilizing those and working on these skills. We have began working, talking about safety, learning our way around the kitchen. This is a refrigerator, this is a microwave, this is a stove. We've started talking about groceries and where grocery items go, but once I get my materials, we will be able to be more hands-on, which my students need, and hopefully the hands-on learning will help them retain this information better. So my goal is by May, the 5 students that are involved in my study will master 3 of the previously mentioned skills.
Hello, I'm Charlene Owens, and I'm the Digital Learning Coach at Central Elementary School in Johnson County. The name of my action research project is Listen and Learn. My area of focus for this project is on increased student learning and focus due to access to headphones for better hearing instruction and questions while students are using technology. My research question is, does having quick access routinely to over-the-ear headphones help increase the efficiency of use of digital resources during blended learning and improve student focus and therefore their performance using their digital math and reading resources? In Johnson County, we have implemented a new math and reading series as well as a diagnostic assessment program that all have digital aspects. And in today's classroom, blended learning we are finding to be very essential for students. So, with that being said, I felt that we needed to make sure that all students had access while in class to be able to focus when they are doing their individualized learning and assessment, especially. So why over-the-ear headphones? Having an access, quick, regular, routine access to these over-the-ear headphones, I feel like will increase the efficiency of the digital resources. The students will have access to get to them quickly, therefore it will just speed up the use and it will become a regular part of the routine in these blended learning classrooms. After doing some research, I found out that the there's a major decrease in the background noise when you have over the ear headphones versus earbuds. It also therefore can decrease the distractions, which will lead to an increase in learning, hopefully, when you got the background noise decrease, therefore distractions are decreased. Also, health-wise, I found research that said that the over-the-ear headphones actually would have less potential for damage to the eardrums because they are farther away from the eardrums, even though they are decreasing the background noise. Also, when it comes to sanitary options, each student will get their own set, but if we were to need to use them again, and we will, they'll be able to be cleaned and used again later, and they are over the ear and not inserted into the ear. So, my action plan. I plan to provide over-the-ear headphones to each student in grades K through 6 in my school. The students will take part in a pre-survey about listening distractions and the use of digital resources without headphones or when they rely on their own earbuds that they bring from home. Students will be assigned a set of headphones to be kept in the classroom where they're readily available for them to use while working on their digital resources, either individually, in small group, or in whole class diagnostic testing or instruction and practice. At the end of 9 to 12 weeks of using the classroom over-the-ear headphones, students' scores on their and their data involving time efficiency will be analyzed. So the teachers will be actually looking at the scores of the students as they use these digital programs, and also on how quick it is to actually implement these programs, because that is important as well. So students and teachers will then respond to another survey about the efficiency of routine and access to the headphones, as well as the ability for the students to focus. So here are some pictures of the type of headphones that I have ordered. I've ordered smaller headphones for the primary students, and they are very flexible. And in the picture, it shows you how they are very bendable, harder to break. They are all made of a plastic and rubber type of material that is can be cleaned with alcohol or a Clorox wipe. Also, the older students in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade will get some that are a little larger that will fit their heads better. They are durable, and they're compatible with our Chromebooks that our students have access to. Each student has access to their own Chromebook. So that is my project, and I'm excited to get my headphones in. They have been ordered. I'm excited to get them in and to have students using them, and to come back to you in the spring and discuss the data.
Hello, my name is Frankie Puckett. I'm a resource teacher at Paintsville Elementary School. I've been there a little over 20 years. I'm sure you probably already heard that already, but it's okay. The name of this particular project is SEL Project Inspirational Lap Quilts. The area of focus that I wanted to work with on this particular grant is I wanted to be able to increase my students' mathematical skills, real life, or real world tasks, such as when they're sewing, they have to measure and use fractions and things like that. And also I wanted to help build those social and emotional learning skills that kids need today. They need to be able to do a small gesture for someone just because. You know, we live in a society where sometimes compassion and empathy is not there. And I want to try to instill that in my students at a very young age. That way it will carry over when they do leave school and enter the workforce, and then just overall in family life as well. Why did I choose this research topic? Is because I wanted to make sure to encourage compassion in my students. I mean, they are a blessing, and I want them to be a blessing to others as well. I want people to see them and know that, hey, they can do this. And I want them to know that they can do this and that they can feel good about helping others while learning skills at the same time. You know, we'll be reading, we'll be doing some math, and they'll be working on some team building skills, compassion, being able to work cooperatively, and going out and seeing virtually to begin with people that won't necessarily be able to get out. So we're going to go to we have a nursing home here in Paintsville that we will be sending the blankets to, and then we will also be sending them to some babies over at the hospital that's in. Okay, so some of the items that we are needing, of course, is the fleece blanket material. We're also going to have them come up with a design, and we're going to use the silhouette and the vinyl and the sublimation papers to put it on the blanket. That way, they've made it. They've taken ownership of it, and they thought, you know, I want them to think that, hey, I did this. I made this. I did something good for somebody else without wanting anything in return. I think that we've gotten away from that, and I'm hoping that with this project, it will help my students to get a little bit closer to those type of skills and build those characteristics. I need storage containers, and we're also going to do our own printable cards. These are already printed, but I ordered blank ones so the kids can design the front of them for the recipient. The participants in this particular study, we're going to do 3rd through 8th grade. I may pull in my younger ones to work with a couple of my older ones, like my 7th and the 8th grade kiddos may work with a 2nd grade or maybe 1st. It depends. I'll have to check and see how it goes. The action plan that I want to do, like I said, a small act of kindness can go a long way. I mean, even a smile, you know, can bring another smile, and that might be the only smile that they get today. And like with the lap blankets, we want to add encouraging statements on there, you know, such as kindness is a major thing for me. I want my kids to be able to have that instilled in them with that compassion, because I think it will help them in the long run with school, with family, with work. So just instilling those concepts and maybe help their siblings with it and other family members. I will measure this by a pre and post test on fractions and measurements, and also I will do a pre and post poll will be conducted to show what the students feels about helping others. You know, how does one act of kindness help another? So basically, we're going to pay it forward. Good evening. My name's Frankie Puckett. I'm a resource teacher at Paintsville Elementary. I've been there a little over 20 years. This particular grant is called Digital Social Emotional Positive Affirmations. The project objectives for this particular grant is I wanted to empower my students to learn some characteristics such as compassion, cooperation, and being part of a team, being a team player. I think that we have gotten away from that. I don't think that kids nowadays are able to do that just automatically. So I wanted to be able to do some writing skills and make a broadcast that they are responsible for to give some positive insights and to give some positive affirmations to others throughout the day. The reason why I chose this topic, like I said before, I don't think that social emotional skills have been at the forefront in the last few years, and I wanted to be able to bring that back some, since we are back to school now and the kids are around others, both adults and kids. So I wanted to be able to instill some of those positive learning characteristics such as empathy, team building, compassion, and just, you know, have them aware of their strengths and weaknesses and be able to build upon that both at school and at home. The participants in this particular study are my group of kiddos from kindergarten through 8th grade. I think I meant more than 30 because we're going to add my middle school bunch in there. And I have a wide range of abilities: ADHD, ODD, autism, MMD, developmentally delayed. But what I've noticed is this particular year is kids are not coming in with those skills that they need to have positive social emotional learning skills. Some of the equipment that I'm wanting is digital. I want to get a dual portable screen, which will allow me to work on one side and my student on the other, and we can work together as a team, or I can pair two students together and they can work as a team together to work on those positive affirmation slides. The other thing that we'll be getting, of course, is a camera, and then it's called a Facebook portal, which the kids will be able to get up and move around, and it tends to follow them wherever they go. I'm hoping, I've not used it, so I'm hoping that it'll be good for the kids, because mine being able to stay in one place, sometimes not quite there yet, but we're working on that attention and focusing skill as well. To measure the outcome, I'll do a pre and post not test, but like a survey on, how they feel about helping others and how it is to work as a team. Do they prefer to work by themselves? Do they prefer to work in a group? What is a successful group look like? Hello, my name is Frankie Puckett. I'm a resource teacher at Paintsville Elementary. This particular grant is called History Alive, 50 Awesome Johnson County Facts. The purpose of this particular project is I wanted to check to see if there was facts out there that we didn't know about Johnson County, the place where we live, and including Paintsville. I wanted to see if we could instill a sense of pride in our county with our students, let them learn something new that they did not know about where they live, where they grew up. We want to be able to study secondary and primary sources, and be able to make a digital scrapbook from the information that we gather, and hopefully we'll be able to share it with our public library. The participants in this particular study is K through 8th graders. I will be working with my resource students and bringing in some Gen Ed students as well. So that way we can have a collaboration with the social studies teacher, Miss Swana. She doesn't know that yet, but she will. But I want to be able to have everybody participate in some part of it. My action plan. History Live is a project that I'm hoping that will get the students involved in learning about primary and secondary resources while they're learning about their community. Learning facts that I didn't know, like I did not know that Paintsville, Johnson County, was actually home to at least 4 different theaters over the years. One being Mayo, and then of course the SIP, and then we had the one over in town, and there was another one, but I can't remember where it's at. And I want to be able to compile all of this information about the Stafford House, about Mayo Mansion, about the mounds, and of course the Big Sandy River, and then of course theaters, just a lot of information. And we want to be able to do that through research and interviews with our older generation. And like I said, I chose this topic because we have a rich culture and heritage in our hometown, but a lot of people don't know it, and we want them to know. We want to have a chance to interact with others while learning, and to collect those resources and to keep them so that way we can hand them down later on. Some of the equipment that I'm going to be needing are cameras, lights, a webcam. We're going to do a podcast about it. So when we interview different people, we're going to go hopefully to the Veterans Association and interview a few people there. We've gotten hold of the library, our public library, and they have, hopefully will be able to give me a list of some people that we can interview locally that has some information that we don't readily know. Like I said, the overall project outcome of this particular grant is to instill pride in my students about where they live, and to be able to use this newfound technology about podcasting and being able to get out what everybody knows in a format that is now just a norm. I don't know much about podcasting, but I'm willing to learn. But I do know that my older students are excited about it. So I'm hoping the long run proof of the success will also narrow that achievement gap between the income levels of our students. Again, like I said, we're going to be doing Mail Mansion, Harmon Station, Jenny Wiley, and we're going to build a digital scrapbook and present it at the end of the project. This particular grant is called Play-Based Learning and Exploring. My name is Frankie Puckett. I'm a resource teacher at Paintsville Elementary. I've been there a little over 20 years and I've never taught anything other than special ed. This year, I wanted to check to see if I supplied my students with a lot of multi-sensory activities and tasks, if that would improve their engagement and learning. Because this year, as my question was, I have a diverse learning group. I mean, from nonverbal to verbal to ODD to severe ADHD. So I wanted to see if I incorporated different things in the classroom where they are not just paper pencil based, if that would help with their overall increase in learning. Some of the items I want are game based, but still can be used for academic, social emotional learning, different things that we can work on. Math, as you can see, I've got a base 10 block, and then I've got dice and Connect 4 games, the Fly Swat sight word game. Some of the other things that we're going to be using, of course, is social skills file folder games. I've really gotten back into that because they're easy to use. I can send them with my aides to work with them, with the students as needed, and we can just pull them out. I'm ordering different ones for science, social studies, there's social skills, math, and reading. I also ordered Odd and Even Stephen game, and I've ordered some alphabet letter blocks and cubes that has, just alphabet letters on it. Plus I have them that has onset and rhymes. The Connect 4 game, I can use it for a variety of reasons, but like I can play a comprehension game with them. I'll read them a short little passage and they have to answer a question in order before they put their little disc in. I'm hoping that that'll help increase their comprehension because they're getting to play a little bit and they're learning at the same time. Also, I can have sight words on there. Read the sight word, you get to go against me or another student. I can also use it for math facts as well. Here are some of the blocks I was telling you about that has the onset rhymes on them, so they can connect them together. So I'm actually working on fine motor skills while at the same time working on initial consonants and word chunks. This is a wireless expert game. I've had the one that wasn't wired, and it kind of gets tangled a lot. But I'm hoping this one will engage the students a little bit more because we can kind of sit a little bit further apart, and we can do math, reading, spelling, even, oh, are you happy, sad, and they can chime in. I plan to measure the success of this one with a pre and post test on their academics, especially math fluency and sight word phrase fluency. Good evening. My name is Frankie Puckett. I'm a resource teacher at Paintsville Elementary. I do this year pre-K through about 5th grade. The title to this particular grant is Get to Know Us Inside Out. The area of focus I wanted to basically focus on this one is we know that once kids leave our school, they're in the workforce. And some of them are leaving without being able to work collaboratively, work on a team, and they lack some communication skills. And they're just not ready to be successful without those behaviors and characteristics embedded in their social emotional learning aspects. The reason I chose this topic, like I said, I think that we have gotten away from instilling those types of skills into our students. I know that we work with behavior and we work with academics, especially in my field, but I want to be able to take it a step further and work on collaboration, teamwork, cooperation, and communication skills, which are very important and essential to being able to work on a team, to work at school, and later on with family and at their job. So we need to build those positive attitudes in now, so that way as they get older, it's already instilled and they shouldn't have as big a problem getting along at work. The action plan that I want you to do is be able to incorporate different educational games, cooperative board games, and different, for lack of a better word, games in the classroom, so that way they'll be able to have opportunities to practice those skills, team building, taking turns, problem solving, and just feeling good about themselves when they do win, and help build up their classmate that didn't win. I think that we need that. It's something that we have gotten away from, and where kids have not been around each other since this whole pandemic. I think it is imperative that we work on those skills. The participants in this particular study is my kindergarten, pre-K, kindergarten through 6th grade, with various levels of abilities, like I've said before. I have a whole range from MMD, autism, to oppositional defiant disorder. I've got one who does not like authority figures, and she tends to buck everything that we do. So I think if I can instill these skills into her now, as she progresses through the grades, then we won't have as many behavior issues with her. Some of the items I'm requesting works on various skills, such as teamwork, collaboration, even academics. I can throw that in there. But it's all related to team building and being able to work with someone else. Like the operation game, I can use it to work on, again, team building, taking turns, and we can throw in some math skills and some reading comprehension skills. Here's a few more activities. The Jenga game, I couldn't find the one that I was actually wanting to put on the particular slide. It has different emotions on them when you pull them out, so that way, if it's sad, they have to give me a situation where they've been sad. What could they do to change it? Again, the big mat is used as a cooperative learning game. My emotions is it's like a dry erase on one side, and then it has Velcro pieces where they'll work together to figure out, hey, what is this particular little guy feeling now, and what could he do to make himself feel better, or what could he do to help his friend?
Hey guys, my name is Kelly Ratliff, and I'm a teacher here at Central Elementary in Johnson County. And this is my ARI grant, Mighty Clickers. The focus and the research behind this grant came from the fact that all the children in today's generation basically know how to work a touchscreen, but most of them struggle when using a computer mouse. And because of the use of Chromebooks, which were 1-to-1 in our county, they don't actually get the physical mouse, they just have the trackpad. And we see a lot of kindergarten students especially struggle with this concept because they don't understand left click, right click, hold and drag, and all that stuff. With that being said, we wanted to teach them how to use the traditional mouse to guide through and operate their computer. And that brings me to my research question. Will providing the implicit instruction and devices promote and facilitate active students' abilities to successfully use traditional technology? Why a Clevy mouse? This is not a Clevy mouse, but it's similar made. Clevy mouse is just a little bit bigger, and it's actually color coded. So it would be red and blue. So they would be able to differentiate between right click, left click based on the colors. It teaches color skills for one. It teaches motor skills, fine motor skills, how to navigate the mouse, click. It teaches basic computer skills. I was taught how to use a mouse when I was little, and it made using the mouse pad when we went on into the laptops that did not have the clickers at the bottom. It made that transition easier. And that's what we hope here, that the different colored clickers would make that transition from that to a regular mouse into a mouse pad a lot easier for them. They use their Chromebooks every day. We take assessments on Chromebooks now. We do daily instruction, especially in this COVID pandemic. You know, we never know when we're going to be virtual. So they're always using that device, and this would make it easier and hopefully make it more successful for those young students. My action plan is this. This grant provides a mouse for every kindergarten student, plus the students that are in my classroom. And I'm going to compare the data against each other, and then we're also going to compare the data from this group to the second graders, because the second graders were the last group to actually have a full year in kindergarten before COVID hit. And they're a little bit more apt to using the computer than the ones we just have now in kindergarten. So we're going to compare those data and see if the mouse was actually beneficial and if it actually helped them progress along the way. And hopefully we start seeing a lot more of those kindergartners being independent, not having to ask how to click, where to click, because they can see, you know, the colors, and they'll be like, oh, well, I need to click here, and I use this button. And that's our hope. And then we're going to piggyback this grant. One of the other teachers in my building actually wrote a grant very similar to mine for her students, and she teaches first grade. So our goal is that the kindergartners will get used to using the mouse, and then they go into first grade and they're still using that same mouse. But in first grade, they're actually going to phase it out and phase them from a mouse into the actual trackpad, mouse pad on the Chromebook. And we hope to see that along the way, our students start getting more independent and more focused on just, you know, the little things that they need to do to be successful when using that computer. Because let's be honest, the world's a touchscreen world, but some of the basics still haven't changed. And that basically wraps up my grant. I hope you've enjoyed, and I can't wait to share with you my results.
My name is Brandy Sloan, and my grant is titled Sustainable Learning in the Primary Classroom, and I work in the Floyd County school system. I plan on integrating this grant into all of my content areas. So I'm a first grade teacher, and outside my classroom is a beautiful courtyard that's just grass, and so it's kind of a wasted space at the moment. And every day I would look out these big windows in my classroom, and I thought, especially with the COVID guidelines, how could we get out there? So this was a perfect opportunity to do that. And this was inspiration from Tracy Tackett. She done this within the Pike County school system a few years back. So here was my guiding questions that really inspired me for this grant. It was, how can I provide more experiences for my students outside of my classroom? I wanted to get outside of these walls to be able to take down the mask, to spread out. My next thought was, how can I allow our region's culture to come alive from the experiences of my classroom? So last year within my social studies content, I had a big focus on our area's culture and the culture within Kentucky and different cultures. And my kids loved it. And I thought this would be a great way to kind of integrate the culture standards that we have. And then would my students be more engaged through a project of their own? I have another grant that I talk about sit and get, and that I don't want my lessons just to be sit and get. I want my students to take ownership of their learning. I want them to be hands-on. I want them doing the work. And I just thought, how much more engaged would they be if it was work of their own and not work that I'm guiding? And then my last question was, what would the lasting impact be for our community by influencing a generation of farming or to farming? So within our school district now, we have the School of Innovation, and they have an agriculture pathway. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to introduce students to that pathway and maybe develop a love for that pathway and lead them down that road later on. So here was the courtyard that I was talking about. And so I've learned from Tracy Tackett over the past few months about how impactful a garden at her school was. But it never came to mind that it would be possible for me because I teach primary. And I still think this will be a challenge, but I think the reward will be much greater. So I know that through the past year, I kind of thought and developed this idea, and I already have a plan for how I'm going to implement all standards: social studies, science, language arts, writing, reading, math. All standards can be integrated and connected to this school garden. My hope is that my students will be more engaged and invested because it will be something of their own. And I would hope that I would build a stronger partnership within our community as a result of this project. And as it develops, I would like to see a school-wide connection. My plan of action is to first collect and purchase the materials. So we're going to need a wooden plant box, soil, other planting necessities. But I also want to purchase some trade books, some content books to provide that reading connection, that science connection, and that social studies connection to the garden. During this project, my students will research. So we're going to research and collect data on what plants we think we should plant within our garden. We are going to be limited the first year to certain plants because we're already starting kind of late within the school year. So we're going to be limited to what we can choose. But my idea is that we are going to choose vegetables and plants that we are unfamiliar with but still connect to our Kentucky culture. I want my students to learn about different foods. So there's also an aspect of learning how to eat healthy and take care of your body. We're going to learn about economic impact. So how can we use farming to influence our economic landscape within our region? How could we impact our community through this economic development within a garden? And we are going to also cover math. So we might be graphing, measuring. We'll do a lot of reading with our trade books, and we'll do a lot of journal writing and investigating with our language arts standards. So I titled this project Sustainable Learning because this is a sustainable project with lasting effects. This is something I can continue to do year after year, and it's going to impact students for years to come. Here's our materials that we're going to need. So I would want plant boxes kind of like this. When you go back to the courtyard and you look, I would like to put it along the sides, and so then our workspace would be in the middle. Our district is talking about purchasing some picnic tables, so I'm hoping I can get 1 or 2 picnic tables in the middle for that space to where we can do our work outside that connects to our garden. Here is some one of the books that we plan to purchase. A seed is the start. There's our a few of our necessities that we'll need for planting. And then a book that I'm going to have to purchase for myself too. So I also plan to display lifelong learning to my students because there's a lot I have to learn too. I would be novice in this category because I'm very unfamiliar. I have very little knowledge of this, but I want to show my students that you are always a learner. And so this book will be to purchase for myself so I can implement this project in the best way. My plan of action is from October to December to order materials, organize, and begin our gifts. From January to April, we will plant, harvest, and just include that content integration. And then by May, I plan on reflecting and evaluating on the project, what went wrong, what went good, and prepare for the next year. So I'm going to evaluate this project by comparing engagement and performance ratings from the day we are working in the garden to the days that we are not working into the garden. So our students more engaged. And then I'll also measure their mastery. So the lessons that incorporated the garden, was the mastery higher than those lessons that did not incorporate any connection to the garden? And I'm also going to give my students surveys. So at the beginning of the year, I'll give my students here in a few weeks a survey to ask them, have they ever had a garden? Have they worked in the garden? Do they know about gardening? And then ask them about a few of the unfamiliar foods that I plan on trying to plant with them. And then at the end of the year, I'll ask them how they felt about their work in the garden. Did they enjoy it? Do they enjoy the lessons more? And do they feel like they learned more from our work in the garden? So here will be our pictures to come pretty soon. And I'm so excited and grateful to KVEC for this opportunity. And I cannot wait to be able to show everyone what we accomplished through our garden and continue this project for years to come. My name is Brandy Sloan, and my grant is titled Making Sense of Reading, Hands-on Reading in a Hands-Off World. So over the past year, I've been refining and focusing on my reading instruction. During this time, my biggest concern and focus has been working towards keeping the love of reading in students as they progress through grade levels. So what I've noticed by teaching in primary is that students automatically love math, but it's not the case with reading. Reading is a struggle. Reading's harder to develop, and students tend to find it very tedious. So the year before last, I really focused on my math instruction, especially when we were virtual learning. And I've really made math more hands-on, and I found that while we were virtual, my students were still able to learn at a high level in comparison to how they were in person. And so I wanted to try to combat the learning gaps that I'm seeing from the pandemic by making reading as hands-on as possible. So what I plan to do with this grant is to try to make sense of reading for my students, make it as concrete and visual as we do math. So the impacts of using manipulatives from the research says that when using it with literacy and reading instruction, phonemic awareness, spelling, and word decoding can drastically improve. It also helps engagement, which is something that kind of can lack with reading instruction. And at the bottom here, you see, I need to have engaging lessons instead of just sit and get learning, which I feel like is what happened with reading instruction over the past year with virtual learning. So I want to put a stop to that, especially in my classroom. I do not want to sit and get. I want as much hands-on, making sense of reading as possible. So what I've observed from my instruction and my colleagues' instruction is that with math, we use a high amount of manipulatives. We use concrete examples, and we have a lot of technology integration. However, from what I've observed, reading instruction has very little manipulatives and more abstract examples through text and more paper focused. So from COVID, we know there are huge learning gaps. So I knew right away I needed to find a way to have intense interventions with my reading instruction. So I want to close those learning gaps. So over my reading instruction for the next school year, and hopefully if things pan out well and we have great results, then I'll continue this. But I want to make reading instruction as much hands-on and visual as possible. So my hypothesis is if my project is successful, then my students' love of reading will increase. So I'll know their engagement and how they feel about reading. I will notice an improvement in map scores and fluency scores. My plan of action, once I get these materials, I need to make manipulative bags. This will decrease the transition time within my classroom. So if students already have these bags pre-made with all these materials inside of it, they'll keep it in their desk, and when it's time to get it out, they'll just get it out, use the tool that they need, and place it back in their desk. So there won't be a lot of time passing things out. Plus, if a student is quarantined or we go to virtual learning for whatever reason, those bags are ready to take home and use. Now, there's some materials on this list that are for STEM purposes, and what we're going to ask for is a hummingbird kit, and you'll see that hummingbirds really allow your reading and your artwork to come alive. So some of the materials that I plan on using for phonemic awareness and word decoding with spelling would be the poppets, which are very popular right now. But I've also been looking into the science of reading, and they suggest using a mirror to articulate the sounds. So they say that students can comprehend sounds and produce them better when they see it visually. So that ties back into the visual aspect that I want to include in my reading instruction. So these mirrors will allow students to look at their mouths, articulate the sound, and remember the placement of their mouth. Speech is also a huge issue that continues to grow in primary levels, and it really holds students back in terms of reading, fluency, spelling, and word decoding. So I'm hoping that I can kind of highlight that speech aspect of our reading as well. I also plan on purchasing some more manipulative and boxes for centers in our guided reading. And then up top here is the hummingbird kit. So you see it has circuits, lights, wheels. That will allow students to bring their artwork to life while incorporating the STEM aspect. So over the summer, we did a project with the story, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. And so from that, we made those circuits and the lights, and we created a windmill. So that kind of tied in with our comprehension aspect and bringing that story to life. So I plan on creating individual bags, and here is my timeline. So by November, I want my items ordered. By December, I want to have received all materials, collect them and organize them, and distribute them to students. Then I'll begin implementing these materials within daily lessons, assessments, and questioning. By March, I will collect and analyze data prior to receiving these materials and post receiving these materials, and kind of compare map scores from before materials to after materials. So this is how I plan on evaluating this project. I'll be combining these manipulatives with technology in my reading and instruction, and I'll be comparing scores from the beginning of the year to scores at the end of the year. I also plan on administering a survey to parents and students. So students will be asked, how do you feel about reading? Do you prefer reading or math? Do you think you would enjoy reading more if it was more hands-on, if you had more tools to use? And then I would ask parents, how does your child feel about reading? Then at the end of the year, I'm going to ask students, do you prefer reading or math? So I'm hoping that the amount of students who choose reading will grow by the end of the year. I'll ask parents, how does your child feel about reading? Hopefully more of them are more favorable for reading by the end of the year after we've used these materials. And I'll also ask students at the end of the year, how did they feel about using the materials? Did they enjoy it? Did they like lessons better without the materials? And I'll compare and contrast the map scores from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So I plan on having several pictures of these materials being used, and I'll post my conclusions and my observations from this study here when it's time. So I'm very excited. We're all very appreciative of these materials that we're going to get and the chance to buy what our classroom needs. So we're very thankful to KVEC.
Hi, my name is Mahalani Wilson, and I am going to be doing a video on the Bulldog Weekly project we have implemented here at DACE for the 2021 Virtual Fire Summit. Okay, step number 1 was to identify the problem, and that would be my research question, which is right here. Would the improvement of communication at my school enhance school culture and improve relationships between staff members and parents within the community? Step number two was to do outside research, and what I found is from one of the articles is that students are the most heavily impacted by school culture, and in some ways the most responsible for its implementation on the ground level. It only makes sense for school leaders to include their voices in efforts to create a more positive school culture. In another study, I have a quote here that says, when administrators and staff give students ownership in their learning environments, it creates a sense of pride in students. And this is exactly what the Bulldog Weekly is doing, is we're giving students the power to voice their own opinions and create their own projects, which they want to record on. Step number 3 is develop an action plan. So what will be implemented to address the problem? To address my problem of practice, I will be creating and implementing the Bulldog Weekly, which we've already started, which is a student-run news program to keep students, staff, and families informed. What resources will be needed? Some of the resources involved is a tablet, which we've ordered, a green backdrop, and a tripod. Those are just a few of the things that we need in order to make it a success, so the kids have their own technology to work with. Who is involved? There will be a team of 10 students chosen from 5th to 8th grade, and I chose them at the beginning based on an application that I made. How are the students actively involved? So based on the role, some of the students are in charge of going around the school collecting information. Some of the students will be responsible for delivering the news, which will be the news anchors. And other students will be in charge of editing and posting the video on our school's social media platforms. These students will begin collecting information on Wednesday, the week prior, and then we post our video on Monday, the week of. So step number 4 is to implement, plan, and collect data. So I will evaluate my intended outcome by analyzing student, staff, and family survey responses given at the beginning. And I also will be giving one at the end of the year when our project is done for the year to see how their responses may have changed. Step number 5, communicate results. So far, I've seen a great interest from students and staff in the Bulldog Weekly news segment. I believe that over time, we will see an improvement in school culture as well as communication between parents, students, and staff. Step number 6 is to continue reflection and plan for a new cycle. So some adjustments I would like to make is to create a stronger identifier for success. I think that having a survey for both students and parents and our staff is a great start, but I would like to see concrete things that have come as, I would like to see concrete things as a result of our news program. So this might be a change in the number of referrals that we give out, just seeing changes in the students' behavior or their interest in school activities. Here is the project or the projected budget details. So here is the Apple iPad that we have, and we are using iMovie to edit and record and publish, and then a tripod and a green screen backdrop. And that is all, and thank you guys so much for watching. I would really appreciate any feedback that you guys have, or I could answer any questions that you guys may have. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Fire Summit. I'm Dionne Bates, and I'm one of the directors of special education here at Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. Today you're going to see a series of videos with projects designed by our Professional Action Network. And our Professional Action Network is comprised of special education teacher leaders across the KVEC region. One of their tasks is to identify a problem of practice. And as they look at what are current issues that are happening in special education, what are opportunities that we can advance learning for all special ed teachers across the region, and then they design projects, resources, tools, and solutions to help support our special ed teachers. Some of them are creating learning modules, some of them are creating checklists, resources, documents to help other special ed teachers. And the idea is that we create some personalized professional learning for teachers that help them be able to improve teaching and learning for students with disabilities.
Hey
everybody. I am Danielle Aldrich, and I am the teacher of the blind and visually impaired in Floyd County, Kentucky. My PAN project is Functional Vision Learning Media Assessment 101. The current problem of practice for why I chose this topic is there are multiple areas that we evaluate and assess as teachers of the blind and visually impaired, that it can be overwhelming to make sure that we cover everything and know how to accurately assess each vision skill for different visual impairment. Currently, there isn't a concrete testing kit that you can just buy for evaluating our students' functional vision. When a student is referred for a suspected visual impairment, they are evaluated with a functional vision learning media assessment, which we call an FIRESummit. This evaluation is conducted over numerous days using various materials and methods to test each area of their functional vision, their learning media, and the expanded core curriculum. We test for skills like visual acuity, depth perception, convergence, contrast sensitivity, their visual fields, and various other vision skills. I will be creating a FIRESummit kit with video models and resource links that TVIs can use to see the materials and methods needed to complete each section on the FIRESummit. It is anticipated that other TVIs will be able to use this FIRESummit kit as a resource to see the tools and strategies used to accurately complete the FIRESummit, and then be able to pinpoint which vision and expanded core curriculum skills are in need of improvement for our students.
Hello, my name is Tyler Branham. I'm with the Pikeville Independent School District. I'm a special education teacher at Pikeville High School. The topic I have for this PAN project is present levels for students with other health impairments. Some current problems of practice that caused me to choose this topic are vague student descriptions in the IEP, specifically in the present levels section, that do not include clear, specific statements that describe who the student is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and there's a lack of use of measurable terms, specifically being taking data and putting it into the present levels to allow for better decision making and a greater foundation from which to start the program and plan the program for the student. And also, again, a lack of and or depth of information, including data from rating scales, various assessments, medical history, those types of things. And so I just feel like it was a good topic to choose in order to better help our fellow educators create a better IEP, a better program for these students with OHI, that we can better define who they are and we can lead them to a better outcome for their educational career. My project, I'm going to assist special education teachers in the development of present levels. And this is going to address three questions. What data do I need? Where does the data come from? How do I find it? And how do I use it in the development of the IEP? I think those are three great questions, especially really for anytime you're determining eligibility for a student with a possible disability. You need good data. You need to be able to fill in the blanks in regards to who the student is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, how they compare to same age peers. And you need to be able to figure out, you need to know where the data comes from. So where do you look? Where do you look for this data? And then how to use it. That's the practical application part of it. This is going to provide special education teachers with a how-to guide in writing a good, descriptive, detailed, and specific present levels of academic and functional performance for students with OHI. Also, I hope to generate a checklist for items that are needed to effectively write these present levels. And the anticipated outcome of my project is first that we gain better information, data, and all the things that we need in order to fill in the present level. What this does, it's going to back the proposal of the disability diagnosis of OHI. So we hope to, through this project, be able to point the educator to the specific places where the data comes from, what data they need in order so they can have better information to use, which will lead to better present levels. The data we get will help inform decision making for the development of the IEP and the annual goals for that student. And in turn, that's going to create better IEPs for these students. And this IEP is a program for the student. It's going to lead to better educational outcomes for these students with OHI, and hopefully we'll see some success from it, also alleviating some stress for the teachers. And that's my project. I look forward to working with KVAC and looking forward to seeing the fruit that comes from this project.
My name is Justin Combs, and I'm from Breathitt County High School. The title is Preparing Students for the Real World. What are the current problems of practice that I chose was really special needs students are not being ready for post-secondary outcomes. You know, they're not understanding the importance of determining a career pathway. And time limits, they do not allow students to adequately focus on students' post-secondary goals. And of course, kind of like how we are here at Breathitt, we're stretched pretty thin a lot. So there's not enough mentors to really support the number of students with special needs. And I'm sure it's like that in all other schools too. All right, my project is I'm going to create a document with steps a teacher can utilize, and that'll keep the teachers and students involved in the transition throughout high school. And of course, KVAC does a great job with the transition also. So this document will not only contain the regulations that are mandated transition, but the best practices also to ensure that the students are going to graduate from high school. And then they're going to really have a certain plan of what they want to do afterwards. What are the anticipated results of the project? I kind of expect the numbers of students will increase for post-secondary outcomes. I'm really hoping the students will be happier knowing that they have someone there for them that can actually guide them through the transition process a little better. You know, like I said, we're stretched thin pretty bad. But you know, as more people get on board, I think the students will be more confident and they'll actually do better in school also. And using the document, the teachers will utilize their time efficiently and effectively. You know, like I said, special ed teachers, we're stretched thin. We do paperwork. We're pulling kids out of class to do tests. We're trying to save the world, basically. But, you know, I think using this document, it's going to really help.
Hi, my name is Angie Cordell. I'm a teacher at Prestonsburg Elementary with the Floyd County Schools. For my project, I am working on behavior and the zones of regulation. So what zone are you in? What are the current problems of the practice that caused me to choose this topic? Well, students dealing with trauma, anxiety, loss, and other emotions. Students with autism or emotional behavior disorders that have difficulty understanding their feelings. And students also have difficulty knowing how to calm down. So the zones of regulation helps with those areas. You have 4 different zones. You have the blue zone, which is when the student is sad, sick, tired, bored, or moving slowly. You have the green zone, happy, calm, feeling okay, focused, ready to learn, or the yellow zone, frustrated, worried when they're silly or wiggly, excited, or loss of some control. The red zone, which is mad, angry, mean, terrified, yelling, hitting, or out of control. So what this project is, the zone of regulation is based on a metacognitive framework. It's designed to help students become aware of their feelings and build self-management skills. The program is designed to help students regulate their actions so they can develop problem-solving abilities and self-control. So with this program, it helps with self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills, responsible decision-making, and for their future.
Hey everybody, this is Kara Dayton, and I'm one of the alternate curriculum resource room teachers here at East Perry Elementary in Perry County. Now, for my PAN project, I decided that I'm going to discuss the Kentucky eligibility criteria for emotional behavioral disabilities. And one of the very reasons that I decided that, I know personally as an educator, the category of EBD can just be really intimidating. It can be very confusing to understand. And each of the subcategories that play into that eligibility can also be confusing. You know, the biggest thing with that is just understanding the data that's necessary to be collected, how to analyze that data, and then how all of that ties into just a true eligibility of a special education category of EBD. You know, with this project, my main focus, I want to be able to dig deep to find out the students who truly have an emotional behavioral disability. You know, our students are faced with more adversities than they've ever been faced with before. They were already struggling. You know, you had trauma aspects, environmental aspects. Then we throw in the COVID-19 pandemic, and our students' emotional and behavioral health just truly has taken an impact. You know, with this, we're going to discuss how RTI plays effect. You know, our students are going to pack in trauma. They're going to pack in environmental factors. They're going to have emotional needs. But our job as special education teachers is to be able to utilize the RTI data and, you know, analyze the data to determine which of these students truly has an emotional behavioral disability that needs additional special education supports for them to, you know, perform at the same rate of their peers. And again, you know, the biggest thing is being able to analyze, to differentiate those students who respond to that RTI data. You know, they respond to just basic interventions in the classroom, and that's able to support their emotional and behavioral needs versus the students we talked about earlier who do not respond to the RTI tiers. And you've got data to support the fact that they have an emotional behavioral disability that's impacting the rate that they learn that's when it's compared to their peers. The Kentucky eligibility determination is what I'm going to really focus on. You guys know that from state to state, each of those determinations can kind of be a little different. But with ours, we're going to look at the Kentucky eligibility determination and kind of just go step by step and just give examples, possible data that might be used, and possible ways to analyze that and really justify the placement of eligibility of EBD. So my results, I'm hoping that this project can be used as a resource for educators, just to become more comfortable with the category, become more comfortable with observing behaviors, identifying emotional behavioral disabilities, and even just understanding tiers of RTI, that this might be a resource for that as well. At the end of all this, I'm hoping that, you know, all of us learn a little bit about the behavioral categories and behavior diagnosis and everything that goes into emotional behavioral disability. If you guys have any suggestions, any comments, or anything, you all can email me at kara.gayhart@perry.kyschools.us. I'm really, really excited to get a head start, get a start on this project, and I'll be anxious to show you guys the results.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Hall, and I work for Breathitt County Public Schools. I teach elementary special education at Highland Turner Elementary School. I service students in grades 3 through 6, and the title of my PAN project is How do I use adaptive behavior data to identify strengths, areas of need, and use those to create IEP goals? So the current problem of practice that caused me to choose the topic, as someone that's new to a special education field, this is my 3rd year. So I feel like that adaptive piece is a challenging portion for someone that's new or thrust into special education. It's challenging to write those present levels and then come up with a corresponding goal once that you've analyzed that data and you've looked to see where the student is at. So I'd like to learn more about best practices when writing present levels and create IEP goals that match what the students need. That's something that just really interests me. And as a special education teacher, I feel like compliance is always important to us. So I just want to make sure that in everything that we do, that we are meeting the needs of our students and that we're being fully compliant in doing so. Explain my project a little bit. So I'm going to explore that adaptive behavior scale used during student testing when they're evaluated for either an initial or a reevaluation process. I'm going to take a look at and show some sample reports and look at the data. And then I'm going to analyze that data to show strengths and weaknesses for that student. I'm going to create some sample goals that could be used and then look at the compliance document to make sure that everything is compliant in those present levels. So I'm going to be exploring, in a sample adaptive behaviors report, finding the strengths and the weaknesses that the student has, and then using those strengths and weaknesses to write a present level to create an IEP goal. My anticipated results, I'd like to be able to create some kind of a presentation, a pamphlet, a template that people could, or other form of media that could be used by my fellow teachers to be able to read that assessment and help them to analyze the strengths and weaknesses, and then correlate that to how the student performs in the classroom. I'd like to be able to have sample IEP goals that could be used for progress monitoring for them to use as well. So I look forward to being in the PAN and working this year. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present my project overview.
Okay, the title of my project is Creating Student Groups. We all want to get the most bang for our instructional buck, and the way to do that is through small groups. Small group station teaching is an effective way to differentiate instruction and reach all students on their instructional level. Creating homogeneous groups of students needs to be evidence-based for cohesiveness and sustainability, meaning you want to have all your students that are on the same level in a group at the same time. A systematic approach for analyzing student data to create small groups for guided reading and guided math instruction is necessary. To create student groups, first administer individual reading screener and or math assessment. If you're going to have reading groups, you need to give them a reading screener, like Fontes and Pinnell, or the MAP assessment, something that will give you a standardized level for each student. Then you need to analyze that data to determine each student's specific instructional level. And then you compare the student data and you cluster these students into groups of like leveled abilities. Be sure when you're making your groups that you factor in outside influences like behavior, group size, and schedules. If you know a student doesn't work well with another student, even if they're on the same instructional level, just put them in different groups so that your small group time will flow more cohesively. The anticipated results of my project are that teachers, co-teachers, or paraprofessionals will have homogeneous reading or math groups for student stations. Guided reading groups will be at the same level using either Dibbles, Fontes and Pinnell, Lexile levels, or map, whatever you use, whatever standardized test data you decide to use that would work best for your class. Guided math groups will be at the same learning level based upon data like MAP, a district screener, or even classroom assessments can be used to make small groups to be able to differentiate your instruction.
Hi, my name is Emily Kinter, and I'm a special education teacher here at Letcher County Central High School. I was chosen to do PAN again this year, and I'm very excited about it. So for me, in my project, I really looked at my classroom and my students and things that I was having issues with that I think would be very beneficial for new teachers, newer teachers, and even older teachers to have a good review. And this is something that can go for both regular ed and special ed teachers. So I'm looking at the implementation of behavior intervention plans and what that means and what that looks like. So when looking at problems of practice, during the pandemic and after the pandemic, I really saw our kids take a big hit on their social skills and their maturity. And that's something that usually comes with time, and it's just something that is built into their day. But because of the pandemic, it's something that they didn't have built in. So we always have these behavior intervention plans that are normally specific to behavior kids. So this is something that I think a lot of times we don't utilize to the utmost level that we could, and just things that are just so simple that we could be implementing. And a lot of things that we're probably already doing, but by tracking it and actually writing it down, we can see trends and behaviors. And so just kind of having that as our jumping off point. So for my project, what it's going to look like is I want to develop a fact sheet for BIPs, behavior intervention plans, what they look like, how are they used, who has them, and things like that. Just some good quick facts for teachers who don't generally look at this stuff and develop these things during ARC meetings, and don't have a good baseline of behavior and what that means and how that can differ from kid to kid. And also I want to have a breakdown of 2 different types of BIPs. There's just so many different types you can have out there, and just have that and identify each section and what it means and how that really relates to the IEP. I also want to have some good blank BIPs for kids, for teachers to utilize for their kids. So something they can actually take away from this. And all these things are going to be things they can take away. And then also a resource page for ideas on how to implement issues that are common behaviors. So things that we see a lot of times in our kids, and things that would be very beneficial for them to have, like just a go-to piece of, maybe it's a sign in, sign out sheet. Maybe it's just different strategies within the classroom, just things like that. So with this, my anticipated results. So my goal is for teachers, this is both regular ed and special ed, whoever has access to this, to see these methods and what they can be implemented and upheld for the students' maximum amount of success. So with that, we want our students to have success. And by implementing these plans effectively in the classroom and outside of the classroom, because a lot of times these behaviors aren't just in the classroom, they're in transition periods, they're on the bus, things like that, then our kids can have the most success that they can possibly achieve.
My name is Michelle Miller. I'm the teacher of the visually impaired with Breathitt County Schools. The project I'm going to be doing is called Expanded Core Curriculum Explained. The current problem of practice that I face as a teacher of the visually impaired is a common miscommunication between regular education teachers, some special education teachers, parents, and school staff as to what it is the teacher of the visually impaired does. I actually teach what's called Expanded Core Curriculum Skills, and otherwise known as ECC. And ECC is a set of vision-related skills that students with visual impairments need to acquire. The project I'm going to be doing is to create a quick guide for all staff and parents and students to use as a resource to understand ECC and what it involves. So my anticipated results is that everyone gets a better understanding of what compensatory skills are and what ECC entails.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Minix, and I'm a member of the Professional Action Network with KVIC this year. I'm an itinerant teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing for Breathitt County Schools. Some problems of practice. When a person is not familiar with hearing loss, it is difficult to understand the impact of how deaf and hard of hearing students acquire or process speech and language and the impact on them socially. And this year we have a lot of new teachers in our district, and that doesn't have much experience with hearing impaired. So my project will provide impacts on the understanding of language and speech for students with hearing loss, their social impacts, and educational accommodations and services for students with hearing loss. My anticipated results are that the teachers will understand and feel more comfortable with the language and speech and social aspects for students with hearing loss.
My PAN project centers around the do's and don'ts for teachers with students with hearing impairment. So often we only can do what we know. And when we know better, we do better. So this project is to shed light on the issues that hearing impaired students may face in the classroom. Often these students can pass screenings. They can blend in with other students very easily. And if they do not wear hearing aids, it is very hard to detect that they have a loss. So often teachers are not sure of how to help them be successful in the classroom, even when they find out they have a loss. So that was the problem of practice that I ran into, and that I have run into very often. It's just teachers just are not sure how to help these kids. So, for instance, you would not want to seat that student near something noisy, like an air conditioning unit or an air purifier. Most of the schools that we have now in Kentucky have added air purifiers to help with COVID. So this is something to keep in mind, that can definitely impact their ability to hear you. Background noise is already an issue for them, so this would make that much worse. Also, you don't want to cover your lips when you talk. If you have a mask, which we are mandated to wear those now in schools, you are keeping that child from seeing what we call visual facial cues. So if you have a clear mask, that is ideal. Or if you can just pull that mask down when you speak to that child 6 feet apart, with the child's permission, of course. This will definitely help that child understand what you're saying. They definitely have to have access to those visual facial cues. And another tip would be that you don't want to turn your back on your classroom. This is true in general, but especially if you have a child with a hearing impairment, because if you are writing notes, say writing on a whiteboard, for instance, and you are lecturing at the same time, that child can't hear what you are saying because your back is turned. So a good remedy for this is to give that child a pre-printed note, such as just a note of your lecture ahead of time, or you could just make sure you face the class when you are speaking. So these are just a few of the tips that I'd like to share with regular ed teachers and special ed teachers who may have a student with a hearing loss this year or in the future. And I'm hoping that this will shed a little light on those issues and just help us all just kind of help these kids have an easier situation at school and help them be more successful. So hopefully it will make life a little easier for them and us.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Nichols. Today I'm going to talk to you about the referral to risk intervention process. I chose this problem of practice because of the great number of new teachers in the KVIC region and in our district, especially in my district and my school. Most new teachers don't understand the importance of or the process for referring a student for an evaluation of a suspected disability. new teachers don't understand that there's more steps to the process than just saying, okay, this student has a disability. The project will assist teachers in understanding that there's 3 tiers of interventions and they all have to be done, and how they are each different in the amount of time that is spent on each tier of intervention. Examples of how and when to implement the interventions. But the most important is that the interventions have to be done with fidelity, that the same person has to be doing them each day or each week, however, depending on the tier of intervention that you're doing. For the importance of analyzing the data that you analyze is the most important, because it lets you know, okay, this student is doing much better, that interventions need to stop, or that you may need to move to the next tier of intervention to have more strategic interventions and more assistance for that student more regularly. The interventions and data required to proceed with referral for the evaluation of the suspected disability. We'll also talk about the forms that are required before an evaluation can go on. The anticipated results is to have new teachers be able to understand the intervention and referral process. Teachers will gain knowledge of interventions, how to analyze the data, and then using that data to determine if all necessary data is present to refer a student for an evaluation of suspected disability. And at the end, we will also discuss the types of disability that we can actually refer a child for. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Misty Noble. I teach special education at Jackson Independent School, which is located in Breathitt County, and the name of my project is How to Boost Virtual Student Engagement. I think that we can all agree that the last couple of years have probably been 2 of the most challenging years ever for teachers due to the pandemic and COVID, and just all of the challenges with balancing virtual students with in-person students. And then let's just topple all that off with when you have students with special needs who maybe you have difficulty reaching them. Maybe they're not logging into Google Meets, or they're not on the Zoom meetings with their class or for their therapy sessions, or for their related services. What if they get occupational therapy, physical therapy, SLP services, but they're not actually participating in that, and that's been a challenge for me, as I'm sure it has been a lot of teachers. So that's what I chose to do my project about. How can we boost virtual student engagement in situations that we are in today, as well as to make sure that these kids get the services and related services that they need? Okay, my project basically encompasses 8 things that as teachers we need to remember, and also that we can do to make sure that our students are involved and that they're motivated, and that we remember all of the things that we need to consider. The first thing is, number 1, we need to understand what it's like at home. First of all, do these students have internet access? Do they have the devices they need? What are the work schedules, of the parents like? Is there someone there that can help them? What do they actually need? We have to be open to that, and, open and responsive to parents or any of their concerns, or, to do anything that we can as far as to help these kids. If they don't have internet, do we need to take paper copies out? What can we do to make the situation at home the best learning environment that we can? The second thing is to have a regular routine, but be flexible. I found I can't say, okay, you're going to Zoom with me every day at 8 a.m. That's just when it's going to happen. And if not, and that's just too bad, you're going to miss your services. It is important to try to establish some sort of routine, but if mom or dad aren't available, or that they sleep late, whether you want them to or not, you may want to try to do those meetings or meets at a time that is good for parents. It's flexible for them. We have to always, there's lots of things you need to take into consideration. There's work schedules, and I know our schedule is important and our time is important, but you have to kind of be flexible and be ready to work with these families. Next, you have to communicate that with parents and caregivers. If you're only calling or messaging to complain, or, oh, little Johnny missed this Zoom meeting, or he missed this Google Meet, or he didn't do this assignment, then chances are, if they're struggling at all, they are going to cut you off, and they're not going to respond to your text or your calls, or they're not going to answer the door if you do a home visit. You have to establish a good relationship with them. They need to know that you're going to talk to them about the positives as well as the negatives, and that you're there to help, not just complain. Also, we have to continue to meet sensory and movement needs. It's really hard for a lot of our kids just to sit, in front of a meet, or sit in front of, a therapy session for a long time. Try to incorporate some movement into that. Have them show you around their house if you want to. Ask them questions. Have them show you their favorite toy. Do stuff that excites them, but also allows them to move around, to continue to pay attention to you while they're working. You can also offer individual sessions. I have several families who they were worried and scared due, to illnesses or disabilities, or the fact that their child won't wear a mask. So they have doctor statements not to return to school because, that's a risk to them. If it is okay, you can have them come in, offer individual sessions where it's just you and the student one-on-one in a room. There aren't any other children around or any other people, or just that therapist. The student is just with the occupational therapist, or the student is just with the SLP. You can do things like that, which make, the child in a more safe environment, and it also makes the parents feel better about situations like that. But then you also have to make the kids be accountable. Don't let them have the attitude that it's okay if I participate this week and not the next, or, there has to be sort of an accountability. It's an assignment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a computerized assignment or a written assignment, as long as it's something that they know that they are responsible for. You also have to be patient and understanding. When they're at home and they're in that environment, their learning is based on that environment. If mom works all night and sleeps all day, or, this is going on, or a sibling is sick, or this or that, we have to consider all of those things too. And then the last thing is just don't be discouraged. We can only do the best we can with the restraints that we have. Just always maintain a positive attitude and let the kids know that you're there for them and the parents. And I think that boosting this student virtual engagement will go a whole lot better for everyone.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Suffridge, and I'm one of the 5th through 8th grade special education teachers at Hyman Elementary in Knott County.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Perkins, and I'm also one of the 5th through 8th grade special education teachers here at Hyman Elementary in Knott County. Today, we want to talk to you about social emotional learning and how we would like to provide students with opportunities for social emotional development in the classroom.
We all know that student mental health and education has been a very big deal in recent years. It's been a very big topic. However, with COVID-19 and the isolation that came from the quarantining and being on virtual learning for the past year, it's really amplified a lot of issues that either students were already dealing with or that have risen to the surface since the pandemic. This year, we've been lucky to have most of our students back in person, but we've noticed that we're dealing with a lot of defiant and non-compliant behaviors. And through discussions with our colleagues and talking with students, we all agreed that students weren't really handling their social emotional lives very well. So we've developed a plan that will hopefully help us provide better supports for our students and to help them deal with their emotions.
Like Ms. Suffridge was talking about, we've noticed that our students are having a difficulty. All of our students are having difficulty. And so we are wanting to implement a check-in that will happen twice daily on a Google form. The students will complete this in the morning when they get here and again after lunch. And we want them to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how they're feeling. And 1 being they're fine and 5 being that they're really having a hard day. And then there's going to be 3 other questions that kind of ask them to expand on how they're feeling by asking questions like what's on their mind and what would make their day better. Secondly, those students that indicate that they're not feeling okay, we're going to make sure that there's a staff member, at least one, that checks in with them throughout that day. And then those students that are routinely indicating that they're not doing so well, we're going to place those students in our check-in, check-out system. And a staff member will check in with them in the morning when they get here, each class period, and again before they leave for the day. And we will be able to keep track of that on a Google Sheet. We also want these students to be provided with social emotional learning activities, and we're going to implement that during our RTI time daily. And those students, the activities that they will be working on will be specific to the issues that they've identified in their Google form and through conversations in their check-in, check-out system. Also, we anticipate that our students will be learning skills to help with their social emotional well-being. And due to this improvement in being able to cope with their emotions, we expect that here at our school, behavior incidents will decrease.
We're going to monitor the behavior incidents first by checking with our administration to see how many behavior referrals they're currently getting. And then we're going to routinely check in with them to see like how much is being turned into the office in order to gauge if our plan is successful or not. If it seems like it's not working very well, then we're going to readjust, because our students are so important to us and their success is very important to us. So it's really important that we get it right for them.
Hello, my name is Chastity Prater. I'm from Campton Elementary in Wolfe County, and I chose to do my project on mental health and wellness. When looking at the current problems of practice that caused me to choose this topic, I was looking at the academic performance and success of students with mental health problems. I wanted to look at how their social relationships are and also their physical health. So to explain my project, what I want to do is survey students in grades 4 through 6 concerning their mental health. Then I want to create a teen mentor program so that they have someone that they feel more comfortable talking with about their problems. I want to provide students and teachers with tips for protecting their physical and mental well-being. And then I'm going to co-teach with our school counselor about mental health. So the results of my project is, of course, being able to start this teen mentoring program, which is something that our kids have been asking for. I also want the students to be able to understand ways of dealing with trauma. And then I also want to be able to give them tips and strategies that they can use when coping with different mental health problems like anxiety or even if it might be trauma. So that's what I want to do with my project.